Chapter 61. Brawl. Roar. Just as Jinan was controlling the flame cloud to place the warship in a safe sea area, a sharp roar echoed between the oceans, and on the sea, that huge figure also began to move. The giant anglerfish was finally completely enraged. Splash! The anglerfish's massive body submerged into the sea, moving rapidly towards the warship. A stream of fiery dragon breath spewed from Jinan's mouth, directly hitting the anglerfish beneath the sea surface. The anglerfish, not to be outdone, thrashed its tail, sweeping sea water towards Jinan's breath. Boom! In this confrontation, the aftermath of the collision of the two energies shook the entire sea area, and water mist continuously rose into the sky. Humph! Seeing the anglerfish's counterattack, Jinan also snorted coldly, the breath in his mouth becoming even thicker, and that scorching power also rapidly increased, the heat already causing the sea water to evaporate quickly. Roar! Faced with this increasingly intense breath, the anglerfish's eyes also became more and more fierce, its hatred for the creature in front of it surpassing that of the humans who had deceived it before. It no longer directly confronted Jinan's breath, but chose to dive into the seabed. Jinan guarded against the movements on the sea surface. He saw the hatred in the anglerfish's eyes, knowing that the opponent would not give up easily. The anglerfish at the bottom of the sea looked at Jinan in the high sky, a cruel and cunning look flashing in its red eyes. In a dim area of the seabed, the anglerfish behemoth began its preparations, its body vaguely visible in the darkness, its tail suddenly swung, stirring up the sand and stones on the seabed. Then, it suddenly accelerated, like a black shadow, rushing towards the sea surface. With its current speed, the momentum formed could reach even hundreds of meters in the air. And once it reached the place without error, the opponent would definitely be knocked into the sea by it. Suddenly, a huge force erupted from the seabed, and a huge anglerfish behemoth rushed towards Jinan in the air like a meteor. The figure of the anglerfish behemoth was like a demon in the darkness, its goal clear and distinct. That was Jinan, who had transformed into an azure dragon. It opened its huge mouth, revealing sharp teeth, with endless malice, heading straight for Jinan. Good timing! A vigilant light flashed in Jinan's eyes. He felt the threat of the anglerfish behemoth. He was not afraid, roaring to meet this sudden challenge. In the air, Jinan's figure as an azure dragon showed unparalleled majesty and power. His tail swung fiercely, and then crashed down on the anglerfish's path. The power in his body poured out without reservation. A tail slammed down angrily. Rumble! Two powerful forces collided in the air, and a loud noise resounded through the heavens and the earth. The fierce impact of the anglerfish behemoth and the resistance of the protagonist transformed into an azure dragon formed an earth-shattering showdown. At this moment, everything on the ocean ceased, leaving only the collision and entanglement of these two powerful forces. Colonel is so strong, able to be on par with that kind of monster. Look! The anglerfish has been knocked into the water. The Marines were extremely excited, as if watching a battle of prehistoric beasts. In the distance, Kuzan stood on the deck of the warship, his eyes fixed on the shocking collision in the air. An endless worry rose in his heart. His brow furrowed, his face solemn, his body seemed to be shrouded in a heavy pressure. What's going on? Doflamingo stood beside Kuzan, his mouth wide open, his expression stunned, completely shocked by the scene in front of him and unable to speak. The other Marines in the cabin also had the same expression, their chins almost falling to the ground, their eyes widened, as if they couldn't believe everything they heard. Attention! A storm is coming! Kuzan reminded loudly. At the same time, he stretched out a hand and grabbed Doflamingo, who was standing there in a daze. The collision in the air brought a strong airflow, causing the warship to sway on the sea, the wind whistling, and the waves churning, as if foreshadowing a more intense battle was about to come. Kuzan's heart was filled with anxiety and worry. He knew that the confrontation in front of him was not just an ordinary battle, but a life-and-death contest related to the fate of the entire sea area. Naval soldiers like Jinan were rare in this world. If Jinan failed, it would be a loss for the entire South Sea. Moreover, Jinan entrusted the lives of everyone on this ship to him. As a naval general, he knew the great responsibility he shouldered. He must do everything possible to protect the warship and the safety of the soldiers, and send them home safely. Doflamingo's eyes widened, looking at the confrontation in the air, his heart filled with shock and unease. Jinan will be all right, right? He realized that everything that was happening in front of him was far beyond his imagination. He could not imagine what consequences these powerful forces would bring. In this chaotic sea area, Kuzan and Doflamingo both deeply felt the urgency of life and death. They knew that only if Jinan blocked the monster's attack could they survive. They were wrong about this. The enraged anglerfish had long lost interest in the warship, it just wanted to kill the creature on the opposite side that made it angry. As the anglerfish behemoth slammed fiercely, Jinan, who had transformed into a azure dragon, felt a sharp pain. His body was already in unbearable pain, blood gushing from the wound, and his body dropped a little in height. But such pain aroused his bloodiness and fighting will. Jinan gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with madness. "Come on, beast, I'll see what you can do to me." He did not retreat, but instead stood up more bravely, his dragon claws stretched forward, flashing with a cold light. Roar! Faced with Jinan's roar, the anglerfish behemoth once again let out a piercing roar, its tail fin swinging, once again bringing a burst of rumbling, rushing towards Jinan quickly. However, just as Jinan's claws were about to hit, the anglerfish in the sea suddenly made a sharp turn, directly bypassing Jinan's side, and then, the fins hidden in the sea once again maintained that destructive power, attacking Jinan's back. This change was beyond Jinan's expectations, and his face became ugly. His mind spun rapidly, directly pouring wind blades, flames, and lightning like a rainstorm, attacking the anglerfish behemoth. Wind blades howled, flames burned fiercely, and lightning flashed, forming a spectacular battle scene. However, the anglerfish behemoth was thick-skinned and fleshy, and seemed to be fearless of these attacks. It fearlessly welcomed all of this, as if it did not care about Jinan's attacks at all. Boom! The anglerfish's attack directly hit Jinan's back, blasting his entire body upside down, and his figure gradually became smaller during the inverted flight. A hint of joy flashed in the anglerfish's eyes, it directly opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Jinan whole. Then, wagging its tail, it sank into the sea contentedly. Chapter 62. Since being swallowed into the stomach of the giant lanternfish, Jinan had been in a coma, as if trapped in a boundless abyss of darkness. In this darkness, time seemed to become blurred and long. "Wake up!" Suddenly, a soft call broke the silence of the darkness, and Jinan felt a warm force rippling through the depths of his heart, his consciousness gradually waking up. "Oh, you're really awake!" The girl circled around Jinan. "What is your body made of? After being dropped in Lord Lantern's gastric juices for so long, you haven't been digested. And you're completely naked, you really have no shame. You should really thank me. If I hadn't fished you out of the water, you might have drowned a long time ago." The blonde girl said with her hands on her hips, looking proud. Jinan shook his head, which was muddled from the coma, and used the leaves covering his body to cover his vital parts. "Thank you. Such a quick thank you." The girl drooped her eyes, the expression on her face becoming disappointed. "It makes me feel like I'm a scheming woman trying to get rewarded for a small favor." What's your name?" Jinan asked, looking at the blonde girl in front of him. Although he knew the other party's identity the first time he saw her. The girl put away her disappointed expression and stretched out her hand. "My name is Olga. Nice to meet you." Jinan shook her hand and then looked around, discovering that this was actually a tropical island. The eye was filled with lush tropical vegetation, palm trees swaying their elegant branches. The only flaw was that the air smelled unpleasant. "Olga, is this inside the stomach?" Olga nodded, affirming what Jinan said. "That's right." Jinan stood up and walked to the edge of the island, looking into the distance. Skeletal remains floated on the water, and not far away he could see a small island, the environment completely different from the island they were on now. "There's another island in the distance. This lanternfish is really not picky," Jinan muttered. If he hadn't come in, he wouldn't have known, but after coming in, he was shocked. This big guy really eats everything. After eating so much, it's not afraid of indigestion. They are all islands swallowed by Lord Lantern. Lord Lantern has 3 such giant stomachs. Olga looked at Jinan, who didn't seem to care, and continued to explain. "We are currently in the number 1 stomach, and the concentration of gastric juices here is also the lowest. If you drift a little further, you might not even have bones left." Jinan nodded. He knew a little about this place, but not much. Having a guide who was familiar with this place was still very convenient for him. "Why were you swallowed by Lord Lantern?" Olga asked curiously. "I didn't find anything else next to you when I found you." Jinan said embarrassedly, "I had a fight with it, but I couldn't win." Olga held her chin, which was about to fall to the ground. You, are so powerful. Then she looked at him with her eyes and smiled. But, to be able to meet Lord Lantern, I don't know if it's bad luck or good luck. If I guessed right, this person must be an old unlucky egg. Jinan had a black line on his face. I've been listening the whole time. If you want to say bad things about others, please find a place where no one is around and say it quietly. Hey! Olga was a little surprised. Did I say it out loud? I clearly felt like I was saying it in my heart. Jinan looked up, where light was shining through the skin of the lanternfish's belly. Although this is inside the stomach, it doesn't lack light at all. Having not talked to anyone for a long time, Olga seemed very talkative. Thanks to Lord Lantern's lantern. Lord Lantern's lantern light is very strong. It will shine through the body into the stomach, it's always bright here. Jinan complimented very supportively, you really know a lot. Olga proudly puffed out her chest, but quickly shrank back, after all, I've lived here for 200 years. I'm very familiar with everything here. 200 years. Jinan pretended to be surprised. Olga quickly covered her mouth. Age was her biggest secret, and if it was exposed, there might be danger. Jinan, unable to help but smile, joked. You've already said it, what's the use of covering your mouth now? In my hometown, there's a saying called locking the stable door after the horse is stolen. You have a few essences of this saying. Olga said with a stiff neck, I'm completely different from a sheep. You're really rude, I saved you for nothing. Jinan laughed secretly in his heart, this word refers to people. Okay, Grandma, I know, Grandma. Olga snorted, since you know I'm 200 years old, then I have to ask you, do you know about pure gold? Jinan nodded, it is said that it can buy the world, of course I've heard of it. Olga leaned close to Jinan's ear and said softly, I'm telling you, pure gold is in Lord Lantern's third stomach. After she finished speaking, she looked at Jinan with anticipation, she wanted to see what expression the other party would have after hearing such explosive news. Relying only on her and Elizabeth, even if they reached the third stomach, they would have no way to deal with the pure gold on the island. So, she placed her hope on the person in front of her. Unfortunately, she was disappointed. After hearing this news, Jinan just replied expressionlessly. Oh! Olga completely couldn't understand the thoughts of the man in front of her. That was pure gold that could buy the entire world, and it could even slow down the body's aging. There shouldn't be anyone in this world who wouldn't be moved. Don't you want this treasure? Olga asked unwillingly. Jinan did not deny his desire for pure gold. Of course I want it. Then why do I see that you are not excited at all? Olga asked. Because, something that can buy the world is not safe in my hands. Jinan said truthfully, the world is so chaotic, this thing is a disaster to keep in my hands. I advise you not to talk to people about this matter after you go out, human nature can't stand the test. Also. Jinan glanced at his clothes, it's best to change your clothes. Olga listened to Jinan's words blankly, I've lived here for 200 years and haven't found a way to get out of here, and you're still fantasizing about going out. Jinan smiled confidently and asked, how do you know I can't get out? Jinan and Olga were immersed in their conversation, exchanging various conjectures and imaginations about the inside of the lanternfish's stomach. In the dense vegetation not far away, a dinosaur figure hid among them, its huge body almost imperceptible under the cover of trees, as if waiting for the right time to attack. Suddenly, Olga caught a glimpse of something unusual, she stopped talking alertly and turned to look into the depths of the jungle. Her heart began to beat faster, and a bad feeling surged into her heart. Jinan, be careful. Olga warned softly, her voice full of tension and fear. Just as her voice fell, a huge dinosaur suddenly stepped out of the jungle and strode towards them. Oh no! At this rate, we're going to be eaten. Chapter 63. In the flickering light of the campfire, Jin and Olga sat together, surrounded by a pile of gnawed dinosaur bones that emitted a faint, fishy smell. The campfire's warmth filled the space around them with comfort. Ugh! I'm so full. Olga rubbed her food-swollen belly, a look of satisfaction on her face. The delicious dinosaur meat had filled her with contentment, the fullness in her stomach conveying a sense of happiness. A 200-year dream, finally realized. Jin chewed on a blade of grass, his hands behind his head. That's something to celebrate. For 200 years, I've been living off the fish that swam in and the fruit on the island, dreaming of when I could eat a feast of meat, she said, picking up another piece of meat and taking a big bite. Olga looked at Jin, her eyes filled with tenderness and joy. She knew how important and reassuring it was to have Jin's company in this unfamiliar environment. Poor kid, Jin thought. Looking at the pile of bones, it was clear she'd really been craving meat. She'd eaten almost an entire dinosaur. Olga fondly recalled her life 200 years ago. 200 years ago, my family lived on the steel island of alchemy, but that bastard scientist's bastard father created pure gold. Jin listened quietly as the girl recounted her past. From then on, everything changed. Hearing the news of the pure gold, pirates invaded the island and killed my mother. Lantern Sama was also attracted to the pure gold, and then swallowed the island I had always lived on in one gulp. I always wondered, if my bastard father hadn't created the pure gold, would our family's life have been different? Jin spat out the grass and looked at the somewhat saddened Olga. You said earlier that after your father created the pure gold, he immediately made you a ring. Olga took off the ring and held it out to Jin. That's right, this is it. A piece of pure gold is embedded on the inside of the ring. The pure gold on the inside of the ring emitted a dazzling light, clearly visible even in the well-lit area. Jin pinched the ring between his fingers and returned it to Olga's finger. This thing carries your parents' love for you. Take good care of it. Olga stroked the ring on her finger and said, puzzled, what you're saying is strange. I'm definitely going to take good care of the ring. It feels like you're implying something. Jin looked at the confused Olga and reached out to rub her head. Someone will explain it to you later. Do you want to come with me to find the person who can give you the answer? Go see, the person who will give me the answer. Olga pointed to herself, then looked at Jin and asked, now? That's right, right now, Jin replied affirmatively. Olga lowered her head and asked softly, are there any other living people here? She had been living here for 200 years, and she had never discovered any traces of other people living here. She stole a glance at Jin, his face with a warm smile, which made her doubt her thoughts. In the end, she chose to believe him. Then let's go together. Strange vegetation and bizarre rocks intertwined, creating a unique and mysterious scene before the two. Jin and Olga traveled through it, sometimes passing through dense bushes, sometimes crossing steep rocks, gradually heading into the interior of the island. Jin walked in front, clearing a path. As they went deeper into the island, his brow furrowed slightly. The environment here was too harsh. It was hard to imagine how a helpless little girl had lived in this place for 200 years. Olga followed closely behind Jin. Her eyes revealed a hint of curiosity and anticipation. She believed that Jin would lead them to the person who could provide answers. Looking at the ring on her finger, she knew that it was this thing that had kept her alive for so long. So, could there be other people who had also obtained pure gold? Olga's face was bitter, her legs already trembling. How much longer until we get there? Jin said without turning his head, soon, it's just ahead. Olga looked at the identical scenery around her and muttered, but you've already said that 5 times. This time, it's really almost there. Jin was also a little helpless. The little girl asked every 5 minutes, no one could stand that. I'll believe you one last time. Olga said with a pout. Jin didn't explain further. After pushing aside the bushes in front of him, a wide open space came into view as the light shone through. They had arrived at a wide clearing, the ground covered with strangely shaped, unknown rocks, with various peculiar plants growing on the stones. At the end of the clearing, a vast canyon was faintly visible. Jin and Olga stopped and stared at the huge canyon. We're here. A sense of anticipation and curiosity welled up in Olga's heart. She knew that the person who could provide her with answers was in that canyon. She tiptoed, trying to see farther. Wow! So many dinosaurs! Olga remembered the grilled meat Jin had made, and a trace of crystal-clear saliva dripped from the corner of her mouth again. Inside the canyon, dinosaur nests were scattered throughout the canyon, each containing is already well known, no need to translate literally, baby dinosaurs. Roar! A dinosaur placed a huge piece of meat on the ground and roared at the baby dinosaurs. The baby dinosaurs immediately swarmed the meat, vying to gnaw on it and enjoy a feast. Surprisingly, among these dinosaur nests, there was also a man wearing a dinosaur suit mixed in with the cubs. His appearance was completely different from the surrounding baby dinosaurs, but the surrounding dinosaurs didn't seem to notice his identity and instead shared the meat in the nest harmoniously. It's too late. To only bring food at this time, it's too much. The man pulled off the hood covering his head, revealing his fat face. I'm starving. The man kept complaining, but at the same time, he was also secretly rejoicing. He knew that this was how he was able to survive until now, by mixing into the dinosaur group and waiting for the dinosaurs to bring food, using this to survive. In this dangerous island, he had to adapt to the environment and learn to use them in order to protect his life. Every day it's just meat, meat and more meat. The man swallowed the raw meat in his mouth and sighed, when will this kind of life end? I really want to eat vegetables and fruits. Chapter 64. There are so many little dinosaurs here, Olga exclaimed. She had lived on this island for so long, but this was her first time venturing into such a central part of the island. Can anyone really live in a place like this? They had come across so many dinosaurs along the way, and had to fight them off. This place was truly a paradise for dinosaurs. Don't overestimate the intelligence of these dinosaurs, Jinan said nonchalantly. As long as you use your brain, it's easy to fool these dumb things. Hey! Olga, who had been eating fruit for 200 years, thought, so the reason I haven't been able to eat meat for the past 200 years is because I don't use my brain? I wasn't talking about you. Don't take it personally, Jinan quickly added, afraid that Olga would overthink it. Olga responded with an annoyed look. Did he think she was 3 years old? He had already made it so obvious, how could she not understand what he meant? Great, she seemed to have misunderstood him. He didn't mean it that way. Sigh. 2 sighs sounded at the same time. What are you sighing about? Olga looked at Jinan beside her. She didn't think he had any reason to sigh. It wasn't me. Jinan spread his hands, indicating that he wouldn't take the blame. Then who could it be? Olga asked in surprise. Could it be? The person we're looking for is up ahead. Jinan pointed ahead with his chin, giving her the answer. Who's on the other side? A trembling male voice came from around the corner ahead. From the sound of it, the person was very excited. Is there someone else in Master Lantern's stomach again? A man wearing a dinosaur costume pushed aside the bushes and staggered over. Wow! The dinosaur is talking. Olga hid behind Jinan. How rude! The man lifted the pink veil. Take a good look and you'll know I'm human. Jinan. Need to take a good look. The man's face was covered in fine beads of sweat, and his double chin jiggled, revealing his nervousness and exhaustion in this dangerous environment. This man, who was usually optimistic, had become somewhat decadent and weak, as if he had lost the courage and confidence to struggle for survival. You're not mute, are you? The man shook his head, a hint of regret in his eyes. Uncle, you can't just say things like that, Jinan retorted directly. Then why didn't you say anything earlier? The man smiled in relief. It's been so long since I've talked to anyone like this. You guys were also swallowed by Master Lantern. The man straightened his clothes, trying to show his best side. Your voice. Olga's trembling voice came from behind Jinan. Olga? Is that Olga? The man looked excitedly behind Jinan, a voice he would never forget, even in death. Are you still alive? Tears streamed down the man's face like broken pearls as he stumbled towards Jinan. But, just as he was about to see the figure behind Jinan clearly, his footsteps stopped. He hesitated. His daughter had been living alone for over 200 years, and she hated him because of the pure gold. He didn't know how to face his child whom he hadn't seen for 200 years. Olga, don't hide. Isn't the person I brought you to see right in front of you? Jinan poked Olga's arm with his finger. However, the girl didn't feel any joy or intimacy. Instead, a strong sense of resentment welled up in her heart. He's my father. Her voice was full of anger and pain. He created the pure gold, attracting pirates and causing my mother's death. The man's face turned pale instantly. He couldn't deny the facts his daughter stated. He stammered, trying to explain, but the words were stuck in his throat. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes as she finally released years of anger and sadness. Why did you do this? Her voice trembled. For what? Didn't you know that your actions destroyed our family and ruined my childhood? The father was speechless, his heart was torn apart, and he was in great pain. He knew that what he had done was an irreversible mistake, a pain that could never be healed. I'm sorry to you, sorry to your mother. His voice was full of regret and repentance. I am willing to bear all the consequences for this. The girl silently shook her head. Although her heart yearned to recognize her father, there was always a thorn stuck in her heart. She chose to continue bearing the heavy resentment and pain, hiding behind Jinan and silently licking her inner wounds. It's better to talk some things out. Jinan glanced deeply at the man, feeling the contradiction and pain in his heart. If you don't tell her the truth, the misunderstanding between you will never be resolved, he said. Only the truth can bring everything back on track. What do you know? The man couldn't see the depth of the other party. In front of Jinan, he seemed to have no secrets to hide. Jinan remained silent. The man knew that Jinan didn't want to say it, so he didn't force it, but he was still a little hesitant in his heart. But that truth is too cruel for her. Jinan pulled Olga in front of him. You've both lived for over 200 years. What else can't you say? The man was silent for a moment, and finally nodded, okay, I'll tell her everything. His voice was low in vicissitudes of life, no matter what the result is, I am willing to bear it. What are you talking about? Why don't I understand? Olga was confused. I hope you can resolve the misunderstandings in your hearts and rebuild your relationship. After all, it's better for father and daughter to talk things out. Jinan silently walked to the side and left this place to the two of them. So, you and mom chose to create pure gold because I had a terminal illness. The girl stood there, dumbfounded, her heart surging like a storm. It's because of me. Her voice trembled, her eyes filled with disbelief. They did it for me. The girl's father was silent for a moment, then nodded gently, his eyes full of sadness and apology. Yes, it was for you, his voice was low in vicissitudes of life, we couldn't bear to lose you, so. The girl's heart was torn apart, and she felt her whole world collapsing. I don't know what to say, her voice trembled, what should I do? The man stepped forward and gently took the girl's hand. I will always be by your side, no matter what happens, he said, you are not alone. The girl felt her father's warmth and comfort, and her mood gradually calmed down. Perhaps, facing the truth, although painful, at least she would no longer be alone in the future. Chapter 65. Gee ha ha ha. Navy brat, I've heard some incredible news, all thanks to you. A chilling wave of killing intent suddenly surged from the shadows. From the darkness, a figure swiftly emerged, brandishing a sharp blade, launching a fierce attack on Jin. Jin's observation haki allowed him to react quickly in the face of danger. He punched the blade that was slashing towards him, but was still forced back. You pirate, didn't you die in the sea? Gee ha ha ha. This daddy ain't that easy to kill. I still need to hang your head on my pirate flag. Lit roared, his massive figure gleaming menacingly in the light. You're unlucky to have run into me. I've sailed the seas for 20 years, seen countless storms. What can a mere sea king do to me? Jin looked at the tattered pirate, I have a feeling you just got lucky, frozen and drifted here. Humph. Lit snorted coldly. That was indeed the case, but he would never admit it. Say what you want, but, you won't be leaving here alive today. At the same time, the pirates' underlings quietly approached the father and daughter, their steps light, their eyes cold, preparing to seize them silently. Olga, quickly, hide behind me. The girl's father immediately sensed the danger. He shielded his daughter, ready to protect her from the pirates at the cost of his life. Olga, is it? If you don't want to die, listen to us and take us to the pure gold. The pirates, wielding sharp blades, surrounded the father and daughter like demons, their faces bearing wicked smiles, their eyes gleaming with greed. We won't take you to the pure gold. His voice was cold and firm. You won't succeed. The man kept his eyes on the pirates in front of him, knowing he had to protect his daughter, no matter the cost. The path to the pure gold was fraught with danger. He couldn't let his daughter risk it. Moreover, these pirates would definitely silence them all after finding the pure gold. It was better to resist to the end here, perhaps there would be a glimmer of hope. If you don't cooperate, we won't be polite. The small boss's voice was full of malice and threat. We know you know the whereabouts of the pure gold, don't try to hide it. The fact that we arrived here alive means the pure gold is calling us, don't be ungrateful. The pirates roared angrily, the blades in their hands pointing threateningly at the father and daughter. Olga tightly grasped her father's hand, her eyes flashing with determination. We won't succumb to your threats. She looked around at the pirates, showing no fear. If you have the guts, kill us. That way, you'll never know the whereabouts of the pure gold. The pirates' gazes turned even colder. They understood this was not an easy target. You either cooperate, or, Cooperate with us with a knife pointed at your throat. There is no other choice. Die, kid! Lit roared, his massive figure gleaming menacingly in the sunlight. He wielded his huge blade, letting out a furious roar, and slashed at Jin like a thunderclap. Jin was not afraid. He covered his hands with armament haki and charged forward to meet the pirate captain's attack. The two attacks clashed in the air, the after-images of the blades shimmering like flames. Lit's attack was powerful and heavy, the huge blade whistling through the wind, its power terrifying. However, Jin's skills were even sharper than his opponent's. His figure was as agile as a leopard, every movement precise, every attack landing on the enemy's weak points. Boom! The sounds of the huge blade colliding with the fist echoed endlessly, the surrounding gastric juices churning from the impact of the aftershocks. The next moment, Lit stared at Jin with a gloomy gaze. Taste the flavor of this monster's gastric juices. He gripped the huge blade with both hands and swung it violently, causing the huge blade to collide with the gastric juices. In an instant, the entire area was enveloped by gastric juices, forming an encirclement, also engulfing Jin. Looking at the gastric juices surging towards him, Jin smiled disdainfully. Forget about these petty tricks. Jin stepped on the ground, and all the surrounding sand and soil rose into the air, forming a thick wall of dust that firmly blocked the gastric acid Lit was striking at him from the outside. You little brat, you're so cunning! Lit roared, his eyes flashing with anger. Today, I will definitely make you die here. A sneer appeared on Jin's face. He was not afraid of the other party's threat. You're not qualified, he responded coldly. Let me tell you what a true powerhouse is. Jin breathed out, then strode forward, his toes touching the ground, his figure rushing towards the enemy like lightning, each step carrying unparalleled power and speed. Behind him, the wind howled, stirring up the dust on the ground. Jin's figure rapidly magnified in Lit's eyes, each step bringing an undeniable pressure. In his opinion, the other party's figure was like a fierce beast, about to launch a fatal blow. So fast! Pressure came crashing down, and Lit couldn't help but panic when he saw Jin's unstoppable momentum. Boom! With a loud bang, the fist collided with the opponent's huge blade, sparks flying everywhere. A moment later, the huge blade snapped in half, and Jin's fist continued unabated, directly hitting the opponent. Lit's body drew a beautiful arc in the air, then crashed heavily to the ground. Amidst the flying dust, Lit struggled to his feet, barely standing, but his legs were trembling, almost unable to stand steady. Feeling the sharp pain coming from all parts of his body, especially in his chest had collapsed, leaving a deep fist mark. Lit spat out a mouthful of blood and suddenly laughed, revealing his blood-stained teeth. Right now, your strength is stronger, but I'm still the better strategist. As he spoke, his subordinates suddenly appeared on the field, grabbing the father and daughter and dragging them in front of the protagonist. But it ends here. I've already caught the people I want, I'm no longer interested in you. Lit grabbed Olga's arm with his right hand, and a gleam of light suddenly flashed in his eyes. I'm sorry, I don't have the ability to protect my daughter. The man's hands were tied behind his back, his eyes filled with regret. The father and daughter's faces were full of guilt and unease. They were firmly controlled by the pirates and unable to break free. Let them go. Jin's chilling voice spread throughout the venue. His words were full of majesty and unquestionable. Lit had hostages in his hand and was not panicked at all. He pulled Olga in front of him. I'm not here to compete in strength, my goal has always been treasure. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his palm. No matter what means are used, we must achieve the final victory, this is our pirate code. Jihahaha. Chapter 66. Jin's eyes were deep and calm, he saw through the pirate leader's every thought. In his eyes, Lit was just a bluffing clown, trying to coerce him with some superficial threats. The other party would never kill Olga and her father, he knew that if he dared to do so, he wouldn't survive either. Do you think you can threaten me like this? Jin's voice was calm and composed, revealing an unwavering confidence. Lit's heart tightened when he heard this. He felt the other party's arrogance and disdain, which immediately ignited a surge of anger in his heart. He was determined to prove his strength to the protagonist and would not allow anyone to underestimate him. You're too arrogant. Lit's voice was full of anger and struggle, and he was determined to make the protagonist pay the price. However, Jin's eyes remained calm, and he didn't take Lit's provocation seriously. I don't know if you've heard a saying, a gun is fast beyond 10 steps, but within 10 steps, a gun is accurate and fast. Just as Lit was about to threaten him again, Jin quickly and decisively took a step forward, his figure as fast as lightning, his finger pointing at the other party. The finger gun whistled past, heading straight for Lit's arm that was holding the people. Lit didn't have time to react, his hand was pierced by the finger gun, and the dagger fell from his hand, hitting the ground with a splash of blood. Ah! A trace of shock and pain appeared on Lit's face. He stared blankly at his hand, blood gushing from the wound, soaking his robe. Immediately afterward, Jin fired a few more finger guns at the pirates. Before the pirates could see the protagonist's actions clearly, they suddenly felt a powerful impact. Their arms were almost simultaneously pierced, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Ah, my hand! What's going on? Who launched the attack? Screams echoed through the valley as the pirates fell to the ground in pain, struggling to survive. Their arms were covered in bright red bloodstains, the wounds trembling painfully, and most importantly, they didn't see how Jin made his move. Now do you believe what I said? Jin smiled softly. His words sounded like the whispers of a demon in the pirates' ears. The pirates twisted their faces in pain, their eyes filled with fear. They didn't expect the other party's strength to be so powerful that even their most basic self-defense abilities were stripped away. So strong. Olga's eyes instantly became as clear as lake water, yet contained turbulent waves. She stared at the scene before her, as if she were seeing an unbelievable dream. The pirates' fierce faces now seemed lifeless, their bodies as weak as a beach washed by waves. So amazing! It's a good thing Olga met him. An unspeakable shock surged in Olga's father's heart. He didn't expect that the first person he met after 200 years would possess such terrifying strength. What surprised him even more was that this powerful person would also come inside Lord Lantern's belly. The father and daughter escaped the pirates' control and quickly ran to Jin's side. The pirates knelt on the ground, their bodies trembling, their faces with a trace of helplessness and despair. Their previous arrogance had disappeared without a trace, and now they were left with only a bleak posture. Jin stood in front of them, his figure tall and straight, his eyebrows revealing coldness and impatience. His eyes swept over the kneeling pirates, without the slightest pity. If you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. Who knows how much innocent blood is on these people's hands? Lit looked up, his eyes full of pleading. He knew that he could no longer resist and could only hope for the protagonist's mercy. His lips trembled, and he spoke with difficulty, "Please, let us go." The other pirates also echoed, their voices with crying and frustration. "Yes, please." Jin's heart was calm, and he was silent for a moment, seemingly weighing the pros and cons. The pirates saw that Jin seemed a little hesitant, so they tried harder to beg for mercy. "We will never dare to commit another crime. Please, spare us." Finally, Jin slowly opened his mouth, "I would like to ask you something. When you were slaughtering civilians and those innocent people, did you ever listen to their pleas for mercy?" The pirates exchanged glances, hearing the implied meaning in Jin's words. "It seems you are unwilling to let us go." The pirates felt Jin's determination, and their expressions instantly became twisted and fierce. The pirates kneeling on the ground suddenly stood up, their eyes full of resentment and anger. "Do you think you can easily deal with us?" Lit roared, his voice full of anger. "We just don't want to fight you to the death. Our ship is also not far from here, and it contains a large amount of explosives." Lit took out a den mushi from his arms, looking at Jin with crazy eyes. "As long as I give an order, the explosives on the ship will detonate. Don't forget that we are in the belly of a monster. If an explosion occurs, no one can predict what will happen." The other pirates also stood up, their figures straight, their eyes flashing with ferocity. They had given up begging and pleading, and now they had only one thought, which was to die together with Jin. The father and daughter's expressions became a little hesitant when they heard the pirates' words. The girl's brow furrowed slightly, her eyes full of confusion, not knowing how to face the situation before her. The father's expression also became serious, his eyes revealing a trace of worry. The pirates' words of dying together made him feel a little hesitant. He didn't want to see his daughter get involved, but he didn't know how to choose. Their hearts were full of contradictions and struggles, and they didn't know how to make the right choice. At this critical moment, their hearts were entangled by various emotions, making it difficult to make a decision easily. The father and daughter looked at each other, conveying unspoken communication between them. However, facing the crisis before them, the father and daughter's hearts gradually became firm. They knew that they could not easily succumb to evil forces and must bravely face all challenges. Although they were not sure what the future would hold, they were determined to fight against fate to the end and defend their dignity even if it meant paying with their lives. Our lives were saved by you, and we will unconditionally obey your decisions, the man laughed heartily. Olga also nodded without the slightest hesitation. Jin stared at the father and daughter, feeling the nameless determination flowing from them. His brow furrowed slightly, and a trace of helplessness and sympathy surged in his heart. He could feel their hesitation and confusion, but he also knew their inner determination and courage. Jin finally took out the wild goose wing saber from his waist. Have you ever seen a flying slash? Chapter 67. Jinan didn't give them a chance to answer. He slowly placed his hands on the hilt of his blade, his movements as fluid and natural as flowing clouds and water. Suddenly, with the speed that the naked eye could barely catch, he flashed past, the glint of his blade cutting through the silence of the island. The pirates' heads danced in the air, blood spurting out like a fountain. Their eyes were still filled with the madness of a desperate struggle, but under Jin An's attack, they were unable to escape the shackles of fate. For a time, blood rained down, and wreckage scattered. Jin An's figure moved through the pirates like a gale, each swing of his blade a decisive act of death. His movements were light and sharp, like a dancer, free and unrestrained, yet carrying an inescapable intent to kill. The father and daughter witnessed this scene, their hearts filled with shock and astonishment. They had never seen such a fierce battle, and Jin An's strength left them in disbelief. They were witnessing a nightmare, a strange fear and joy rising in their hearts. But Jin An's eyes remained calm and resolute, his movements merciless, knowing that these pirates were all covered in blood debts. In this cruel world, pirates spring up like bamboo shoots after a rain, impossible to kill them all. But he couldn't prevent it before it happened, all he could do was this. Well done! The man jumped up excitedly. These scumbags should have gone to hell long ago, and if he had the strength, he would have loved to personally slice up these bastards who hurt his daughter. Let's go, Jinan said, looking at the father and daughter. Olga asked strangely, go where? Jinan looked at Olga strangely, pointing his finger in the direction of the anglerfish's lantern. Of course, we're leaving, the smell here is terrible. You've come all the way here, aren't you going to take a look at the pure gold? Olga felt very strange. Having come all this way, he had no interest in pure gold, when it was only a step away. To be honest, I'm interested in pure gold, but not that much, Jinan thought for a moment and continued, but since we're here, we can indeed take a look. Then let's go. Olga had been coveting pure gold for 200 years, and now she was very excited to be able to search for it. Let's go. Treasure hunt. 30 minutes later. Jinan and the other two stood in front of a building full of stairs. Why does this thing look so much like a Mayan pyramid? Jinan murmured. Is Maya the name of an island? Olga asked curiously. Jinan said wistfully, it's a very, very distant place. Okay, let's not talk about that, let's go in. Olga's father walked ahead, leading the way. There are many traps inside, remember to keep up with me. The laboratory where the pure gold is stored is at the very back of this building. As the creator of this place, the man knew this place very well, and with him leading the way, he could save a lot of effort. I haven't asked yet, uncle, what's your name? Jinan looked at the man in front and asked curiously. Olga's father stopped at the entrance, pointing to the words on the stone tablet. Mystic Na Azier. After 200 years, I almost forgot my name. Azier stroked the stone tablet, his face filled with pride and nostalgia. Uncle Azier, please take care of me. Jinan had a good impression of this uncle and would definitely trick him into going to the Sorbet Kingdom if he had the chance. Jinan and the father and daughter passed through a series of traps and came to the room where the pure gold was stored. Peacock Harp. Eagle Bridge, the last door. These traps were a test of life and death for intruders, but for Azier, who designed them, they were all memories. Jinan and the father and daughter pushed open the door and walked into the laboratory, a dazzling sight before them. The pure gold under the glass cover shone with dazzling golden light, exuding an intoxicating aura. This is pure gold. A hint of surprise appeared in Jin An's eyes. He had never seen such a gorgeous scene. The light emitted by pure gold not only represented wealth, but also meant that life could be extended for a long time. Olga was also shocked by the scene in front of her. She had never been to her father's laboratory, and even the ring on her finger was sent to her by her parents. They stared at the pure gold in the glass cover, their eyes flashing with a different color. Their mood could not be calm for a long time, and their hearts were filled with expectations and longings for the future. The golden light emitted by pure gold made them feel a wonderful power. This is pure gold. As long as you are exposed to its light, the aging speed of your body will slow down a lot, and even the development of diseases will be slowed down indefinitely, Azir said. Azir took the pure gold out of the glass container, his eyes filled with emotion. This thing saved his daughter's life, but also buried his wife's life. He really had mixed feelings about this thing he made. Wow, Dad, there are so many books here. Olga said excitedly. They looked around and found a large number of documents and experimental equipment in the room. These documents recorded countless experiments and research results, and it was clear that this laboratory had once carried out many important scientific projects. What should we do with these things? Jinan tilted his head and looked at Azir and asked. They are all research materials about pure gold, there is no need to take them out, Azir said with emotion, let these materials be stored in Lord Lantern's belly forever. Olga stared wide-eyed at the glittering pure gold. Are we taking all the pure gold out? Azir also turned his attention to Jinan, who needed to make the decision. Pure gold represents endless wealth, Jinan said softly, but the price of this wealth is a bit high. It's better to leave the pure gold here, let's not take out this thing that may cause endless disputes. Immortality is full of temptation for everyone. If this world is full of immortals, the direction of the world has been fixed. The strong will always be strong, and the weak will never have a chance to turn over. The father and daughter stood silently aside, watching Jinan's actions, their hearts filled with admiration. People who can control greed and desire will definitely achieve great things in the future. Ding! Azir took a knife from the table, gently scratched the pure gold, and took off a piece the size of a fingernail. You can't come here for nothing. Azir handed the pure gold in his hand to Jinan. Keep this piece as a souvenir, and it's also my gratitude to you for saving our father and daughter. So, how do we get out? The three had already walked to the place where Jinan fainted, but Olga had no idea how to get out of this place. Call Elizabeth over, you ride on it, and I'll take you out. Water lizards can run on the water. Jinan also wanted to catch a few more to take out. Such a convenient means of transportation is not easy to find. Okay. Olga acted directly without asking the reason. Now she can be said to be obedient to Jinan's words. Wow, the feeling of flying is great. Olga flew in the air, feeling this wonderful experience. Get ready, we're going out. Jinan took the father and daughter and a few water lizards and flew directly to the little tongue of the anglerfish. He grinned, clenched his right fist, accumulating strength, and then punched out. Roar! The anglerfish felt a sharp pain and let out a shrill roar, its mouth opening uncontrollably. Let's go! Controlling the flame cloud to surround a few people, they directly left from the anglerfish's mouth. Chapter 68. Great Sea Route, an unknown island. The sea breeze roared, blowing sand horizontally, and the sky was covered with dark clouds, as if cursing this forgotten isolated island. At the edge of the island, a group of dark figures surrounded a woman with emerald green hair. The ship parked by the sea, is that the ship of you traffickers? The girl held a knife against the people in front of her, her voice echoing on the island. I was so stupid. You people don't look like good people at all, how could I have fallen for your tricks? Despite being in danger, her attitude was uncompromising, as if she possessed the power to protect herself and change the situation. The traffickers laughed at her, holding sharp blades in their hands, their eyes revealing a lewd glint. You are indeed quite stupid, only realizing it when you saw our ship. The leading trafficker licked his lips, his voice carrying a vulgar smile. Don't struggle, with your strength, you can't resist us. He lightly patted his palm with his sword, his eyes greedily scanning the woman's body, as if she was already in their grasp. This hair, this skin, this figure, she's simply a goddess. His eyes gleamed, as if he could already see the woman after he had tamed her. The woman faced the trafficker's cheap laughter and dirty gazes, without the slightest bit of retreat. If I get hurt, the price will go down, right? However, the traffickers didn't care, their eyes only filled with the desire to possess and crave the woman. The sea is behind you. You have no way to escape from our hands. Give up. No. I still have a way to escape. The woman's voice carried a hint of anger and disgust. Is this the end? Looks like I can only fly to the future again. The woman could only choose to use her last resort to escape from here. Suddenly, a little girl's scream came from the sky. Wow! Everyone looked up, only to see 3 figures descending from the sky, landing on the island with the gentle sound of the wind. I told you not to fly so fast, my heart is about to jump out. The girl clutched her chest and gasped for breath, her eyes flashing with horror, her legs weakened, and she sat down on the ground with a thud. But we're in a hurry. Jinan scratched his nose, looking slightly embarrassed. I'm letting you rest every now and then. Resting can't withstand the devastation of your speed. The girl looked around at the unfamiliar island. Where is this place again? Jinan looked at the unfamiliar scene and was also a little troubled. Suddenly, he saw a group of people not far away, his face lit up, he had people to ask for directions. I'll go ask for directions, you guys stay here and continue resting. Azir leaned against a coconut tree and waved weakly, his condition was even worse than his daughter's, he couldn't even speak. Don't come over. The woman surrounded by traffickers saw the man who had landed on the island walking towards them and quickly shouted. Jinan did not choose to listen to the woman's words and continued to walk forward, his eyes looking at the traffickers in front of him with interest. Excuse me, we want to leave the sea area, do you know what this place is? When the traffickers heard Jinan's words, a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes, followed by a barely suppressed smile. Oh, you want to leave the sea area? The trafficker's voice was full of ridicule. That's not easy, but we are kind-hearted and can help you, as long as you follow us, we guarantee to take you away. Sigh, you shouldn't have come. The woman surrounded by traffickers sighed, in this situation, she could only take these 3 people to the future together. I'm just asking for directions. Jinan looked at the traffickers surrounding him and said, spreading his hands. We know, we said we'll take you out. The traffickers took out chains, preparing to tie the 2 of them up and take them away. A trace of anxiety flashed in the woman's eyes, her eyes swept across the traffickers, trying to find an opening to break through the encirclement with this man. But a sly glint flashed in the protagonist's eyes, since you don't want to be reasonable, then there's nothing I can do. Just as the traffickers were about to attack, Jinan's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. He nimbly dodged the first chain attack, and then suddenly attacked the nearest trafficker at an unexpected speed. A heavy punch aimed at the trafficker's chin, making a muffled sound, and the trafficker fell to the ground. Oh my god! There's a monster! The other traffickers were shocked and ran away. Want to run now? A cold smile crept onto Jinan's lips. It's too late. Jinan's figure was like the wind, sweeping towards the traffickers, every punch and kick carrying destructive power. The traffickers had no power to fight back, and one after another, they were knocked to the ground, leaving only a mess. I was rash. The woman stared dumbfounded at the scene. She originally thought that this man was just an ordinary person who had strayed into this place, but she didn't expect him to be so brave and so powerful. I heard a woman, cough cough cough. The sound of, cough cough, help. A figure with a body swollen like a ball, holding 2 knives, emerged from the sea, his face covered with seaweed, looking like a monster in the sea. The woman and Jinan stared dumbfounded at the sudden monster, and a hint of surprise could not help but rise in their hearts. They did not expect that there was such a creature hidden in the sea. Who dares to act recklessly in this sea area? The monster shouted loudly. Then, the figure fell heavily to the ground in Jinan's eyes. Did the monkey send this monster to be a comedian? Jinan walked to the monster's side and reached out to poke the other party's body. Unsurprisingly, there was no reaction at all. Not to mention, this monster's body is quite elastic. The woman gently walked up to the protagonist, her eyes full of gratitude, and gently bent down and bowed to Jinan. Thank you, you saved my life. The woman's voice trembled slightly, but her words were full of sincerity and gratitude. Without you, we would have already become those people's captives. Jinan nodded gently, a hint of kindness flashing in his eyes. It was just a small effort, and they were also planning to attack me. So, strictly speaking, I was just acting in self-defense. Olga finally recovered, and took a breath when she passed by the traffickers. How did asking for directions turn into killing everyone? Jinan curled his lips and said, they wanted to sell me for money, should I have provided them with good food and drink? Olga didn't take these traffickers to heart either, and when she saw the woman next to Jinan, her eyes stared blankly at her. What a beautiful person! The woman smiled slightly and bowed to the person in front of her. My name is Amatsuki Toki. Nice to meet you, please take care of me. Chapter 69. Moonlight spilled like water on the lonely island, casting mottled shadows. In the silent night, a sudden rainstorm shattered the tranquility, thunder rumbled, and lightning tore across the dark sky. The weather on the Grand Line was ever so fickle, one moment clear skies, the next a torrential downpour. Amidst the wind and rain, a lone woman stood by the sea, raindrops seeping through her umbrella and soaking her clothes. Her eyes reflected helplessness and confusion, like a lost bird weary in body and soul. Staying here won't do your body any good. Jinan appeared in her line of sight. His face was indistinct in the downpour, yet exuded a gentle air, shifting his umbrella closer to the woman, just enough to block the stray raindrops. Toki Amatsuki's fair face flushed slightly, her bright eyes fixed on Jinan, a little embarrassed by the smiling face looking back at her. Thank you. Toki Amatsuki said softly, her voice trembling slightly, yet filled with tenderness. She had drifted through the river of time for too long, and the sudden pause felt, not bad. Something seems to be on your mind. Jinan observed Toki Amatsuki's expression, her eyes revealing a deep worry and a hint of anticipation, as if troubled by something both longed for and feared. The woman raised her head, looking into Jinan's warm eyes, and a feeling she couldn't name welled up within her. Her voice was soft and moving. Since I was little, I've longed to reach Wano country, but after traveling for so long, reaching Wano country is still a distant dream. Hearing the name of the island, Jinan felt a sense of familiarity. In his previous life, he had constantly heard people talking about wanting to go to Wano country to kill Momonosuke. But he didn't know who Momonosuke was. After all, he had hoarded after defeating Doflamingo, and hadn't been able to continue watching until he transmigrated. Wano country, I remember it being on the Grand Line, right? This should be the South Blue, right? Standing by the sea, Toki Amatsuki listened to Jinan say that this was the South Blue, a look of surprise on her face, her eyes fixed on the distance, as if thinking about something, then gently shaking her head. This is the Grand Line, the second half. Hey! Coming out of the anglerfish's belly and actually ending up in this kind of place, it would take a lot of time to return to the South Blue. Could it be that you're from the South Blue? Toki Amatsuki's beautiful eyes widened, her jade hand covering her lips. She knew how far it was from the South Blue to here, but the other party didn't seem to know that he had arrived on the Grand Line. This was a bit incomprehensible. It couldn't be that he teleported here, right? She could travel through time, could someone travel through space? This piqued Toki Amatsuki's interest once again. Looking at the man in front of her, wearing what appeared to be a marine uniform, clothes she had seen during her time travels. Yet, my home is in the Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue. Jinan rubbed his slightly aching head. The denden mushi had long been digested into dregs in the anglerfish's stomach acid, and he could only rely on himself to return to the South Blue. He thought, how could he have been flying for so long without encountering a single warship? Encountering a warship in the second half of the Grand Line would be a miracle. This was completely a paradise for pirates. The strongest pirates in the world occupied a territory here and reigned as kings and overlords, and the navy's power here could be said to be stretched thin. If you want to go back to the South Blue, it might be a little difficult, Toki Amatsuki said after a moment's thought. Although she didn't know exactly where she was. However, if she wanted to return to the Four Seas from the second half of the Grand Line, there were only two methods to choose from. The first was to directly cross the calm belt, which was the simplest and most difficult method, because as far as she knew, the people who chose this method all ended up in fish bellies. The second was to reach the Four Seas through the Red Line, but this method required applying to the celestial dragons first. She didn't know if this method was reliable, she had only heard it said. It doesn't matter, there's always a way. Jinan could only comfort himself like this. Toki Amatsuki looked at the man in front of her with shining eyes, this sentence was truly philosophical. Jinan slapped his head and returned to the original topic. Oh, right, you said you wanted to go to Wano country, right? Toki Amatsuki nodded, a hint of longing flashing in her eyes. Her family had lived outside of Wano country for generations, but strictly speaking, they still belonged to the Kojiki family's subordinates. But, now her family had disappeared into the river of history. She just had a persistent desire to go to the place that her family had always longed for. Then after you reach Wano country, what are your plans? Jinan asked curiously. Wano country, after, plans. Toki Amatsuki's beautiful eyes were a little confused. She had never thought about this, her journey had spanned 800 years, and now she was alone. I don't know. After thinking for a while, Toki Amatsuki still couldn't come up with an answer to this question. But I must go to Wano country. Her words were firm, and if she couldn't even reach Wano country, let alone anything after that. This is my first time coming to the Grand Line, and I don't know where Wano country is either. I really can't help you with this. Jinan looked at the corpses all around him, feeling a little regretful. I should have left one alive to ask questions. Earlier, he thought he was still in the South Blue, and without thinking too much, he directly killed everyone. But, it's not a big problem. Jinan and Toki Amatsuki looked at each other, and together cast their eyes on the monster lying on the beach snoring. Jinan! Jinan! I found something good! Olga held an umbrella, a piece of paper in her hand, and ran happily towards Jinan. Before Jinan could reply, Olga handed the paper in her hand to him. Look! Look! This is the bounty poster of those guys you just killed. We're rich! Olga jumped up and down beside him. This money was the first funds they had obtained since returning to this world. How could she not be happy? The Octopus Topaz Pirates. Captain, Karma. Bounty, 40 million berries. Jinan stared at the photo on the bounty, stroking his chin and falling into thought. This guy, how does he look like I've seen him somewhere? Toki Amatsuki was a little strange, her beautiful eyes moving back and forth between Jinan and the bounty poster. What? Have you seen this guy before? Suddenly, Jinan slapped his thigh, he remembered where he had seen this guy. During the Marineford War, this guy participated in that war as the captain of a pirate crew under the Whitebeard pirates. Yet, I've sort of seen him. Anyway, this guy is not a good person. Jinan chuckled and skipped over this topic. 40 million ah! Olga held the bounty poster and giggled foolishly, her heart bursting with joy. Toki Amatsuki didn't care, her eyes turned back to the monster at her feet, and she kicked him. This guy scared her when he appeared, and it felt good to kick him a few times to vent her anger. Toki Amatsuki looked at Jinan, wanting to hear his opinion. How about we just throw this guy into the sea? Chapter 70. Hey! Why did you throw me into the sea? After a night, the monster reverted to his original appearance and began to curse at Jinan and the others. Jinan said innocently, you scared us when you came out of the sea yesterday. We're not even holding you accountable, and we kindly let you return to where you came from. I feel like we didn't do anything wrong. The man pointed at Jinan, his fingers trembling with anger, and after a long while, he choked out a word. You. Jinan waved his hand, looking like he was doing a good deed without expecting anything in return. I know you want to thank me, but there's no need to be so excited. I just did a small favor. The man became even angrier. Jinan interjected, okay. I told you, there's no need to thank me. She. The man's face turned purple. He was so frustrated. Was this person in front of him crazy? He wouldn't let him finish a complete sentence. Pfft. Tian Yushi finally couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. A man nearly 4 meters tall with a green face, wanting to get angry but unable to win against the other person, was truly unbearable. Even you. The man felt like he was pierced by 1,000 arrows. He embarrassed himself in front of a beautiful woman, and he wished he could find a hole to bury his head in. If you're a man, come with me for a duel. The man took a step forward and stood in front of Jinan, looking down at the man who only reached his waist. I'm not familiar with you, so why should I listen to you? Jinan was too lazy to pay attention to the other party's request, yawned, and lightly walked to Tian Yushi's side. Tian Yushi restrained her smile. Her impression of the monster man worsened. Brother, let's forget about fighting. Jinan remembered that he still had something to ask. Do you know how to get to Wano country? Tian Yushi covered her moist lips. She didn't expect the person she just met to take her words from yesterday to heart. Wano country. The man's expression became serious. He had just come out of that place and didn't want to go back. Seeing the man's reaction, Tian Yushi immediately became excited. She knew that this person knew the location of Wano country. Are you from Wano country? I've always wanted to go to that place. Can you take us to Wano country? The man's face was full of resistance, and his face wrinkled up. I went through so much hardship to escape. Tian Yushi frowned. She felt uncomfortable that the place she had always looked forward to was being disliked by the other party. Do you have many enemies in Wano country? Jinan asked curiously. Jinan believed that there must be some unspeakable reason for this person's strong resistance to going to Wano country. How could that be? The man immediately retorted, I, Odin, am loved by everyone and admired by all flowers in Wano country. No one is more popular than me. He was the current daimyo of Kuri, and the entire Wano country was his territory. It's just that he always wanted to go out and see the outside world, but unfortunately, he was prone to getting lost, and only now has he realized this dream. Then can you point us in a direction? Tian Yushi no longer pressed, but could only settle for the next best thing. This. Odin's forehead dripped with cold sweat. He had no idea where this place was. This was the farthest place he had ever been, and his tendency to get lost had always affected his sense of direction. He couldn't do it at all. Suddenly, a lot of people's shouts came from the coast, scaring a flock of birds resting on the island. Odin! You're not dead yet. Who are they? Jin An's eyes flashed. In his perception, many people with extraordinary power had landed on the island. He saw the pirate ships parked on the coast, the Whitebeard pirates. Just then, Olga and Asir ran from afar, their faces pale and their teeth chattering uncontrollably. Pirate ships, so many pirate ships, this island is surrounded by pirate ships. Although this is the second half of the Grand Line, there are too many pirates. Why did these pirate ships come here? Olga was incoherent. She was over 200 years old, but it was the first time she had seen such a scene. Looking at the ships with pirate flags anchored on the distant coast, and the approaching footsteps, Olga and her daughter and Tian Yushi were shocked. They couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. So many pirates could easily destroy a world government member state. The aggressive pirates in front of them directly refreshed the three people's worldviews. Most importantly, they seemed to have called someone's name. Odin's face was extremely rich, sometimes happy, sometimes disappointed, and finally only left a sigh. A man with a long-handled sword slowly walked to Odin and stood still. Odin, get on my ship. Odin's dejection was swept away, and he raised his head and stared at the other party. But I let go. The test you gave me, I couldn't complete. A pineapple-headed man walked from afar, one step behind the tall figure, and walked to Odin with a teasing expression. Giving up your ambition because of a woman's scream, I didn't expect you to be so naive. The pirates cheered, and they sincerely recognized this man who had persisted in the sea. Ha ha ha, Marco, don't tease Odin. Look at his face. Don't say, it's the first time I've seen him with this expression. It's really interesting. It feels like a woman was snatched away. Seeing that the only two women were all hiding behind a stranger, the pirates had an idea in their hearts. That guy Odin wouldn't have failed to save people and was instead disliked by them, right? Whitebeard looked at Jinan with interest. Boy, have we met somewhere before? Hearing Whitebeard's words, Jinan looked puzzled. He seemed to have had no contact with the other party at all, but the other party seemed sure that he was the person in his memory. Jinan shook his head and said truthfully. I don't remember meeting you. Whitebeard laughed loudly, and the clouds in the sky were scattered far away by his laughter. It seems I need to give you some hints. He paused and continued. Years ago, God Valley. Jin An's eyes sharpened as he stared at Whitebeard. He had no contact with the other party on that island at all. How did the other party know him? Whitebeard inserted Murakumagari into the ground, and a wave of air swept towards Jinan. It seems you remember, Gururarara. When I arrived there, I just happened to see you leave. Roranoa was badly hurt at the time. I haven't seen her so embarrassed since I got on Rock's ship. Wow! The surrounding pirates looked at the short figure in front of their captain and couldn't help but exclaim. No way! Charlotte Linlin, that monster, was defeated by this little guy. To be able to survive in a place like God Valley, is this guy that strong? Chapter 71. How about coming aboard my ship? Whitebeard reached out and patted Jinan on the shoulder, his eyes fixed on Jinan. Whitebeard's words silenced everyone present, they were all stunned by what he said. Dad, we don't even know what that guy's background is. Is it a little unreliable to let him join us? After the silence, the pirates whispered to each other, clearly not interested in the person in front of them. They are the Whitebeard pirates who rule the Grand Line, not just anyone can join. If his identity is unclear, even defeating Big Mom wouldn't be enough. Didn't they see how Odin, that big sucker, went through many tests before being slowly accepted by them? Jinan looked at the hand on his shoulder and took a step back without leaving a trace. The clothes he was wearing were all stripped from pirates, otherwise Whitebeard probably wouldn't have offered him to join the pirate crew if he had seen his military uniform. No need, I'm quite comfortable staying in the navy. Jinan looked directly at Whitebeard, not panicking at all. Navy. He said he's a navy. The pirates put away their smiles and all drew the knives from their waists, pointing them at Jinan, their eyes revealing a bloodthirsty light. Oh. Whitebeard raised an eyebrow slightly, he didn't expect the other party to dare to tell the truth directly. Of course he knew Jinan's identity, this guy had been on the news headlines for a while, it was hard not to know. However, he really admired the other party and wanted him to join his big family. Whitebeard said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, "You're a navy guy, running alone into our pirate territory, are you looking for a thrill?" Jinan knew that saying anything at this point was futile, whether he could leave here safely today depended entirely on the other party's mood. Mainly because he wasn't alone. But he still explained, "Not really, I stumbled upon this place." The pirates didn't believe Jinan's words, the hostility in their eyes only increased. "Dad, no need to say more to him, let us go kill him. A navy guy daring to come here should be prepared to die at any time. You don't need to say more, I have my own considerations." Whitebeard stomped his foot on the ground, and at the same time, an invisible aura poured out from him towards Jinan. Suddenly, Jinan felt a huge pressure coming towards him, he knew that Whitebeard was testing him. He wasn't afraid at all, he could grit his teeth and withstand this bit of pressure. Seeing Jinan's lack of reaction, Whitebeard revealed a satisfied expression, he hadn't misjudged him. The other party was indeed worthy of him extending an olive branch. "Gura gura gura." Whitebeard's aura dissipated, "You're a good kid, really not considering joining us?" Jinan took a breath and slowly said, "Although the navy may not be as free as you, but there's a stable place to live and a steady salary. I'm very satisfied with this kind of life." It seemed there was nothing to talk about, Whitebeard retracted his gaze, since the other party had made a decision, he wouldn't force it. He, Whitebeard, wouldn't force others to do things they didn't want to do. Turning his head to look in another direction, Whitebeard asked. "Odin, are you still planning to go to sea with me?" "Of course." Odin was ecstatic and answered without hesitation. "What follows is an adventure beyond your imagination." Whitebeard looked at him and asked, "Are you ready?" "Brother. Is that even a question, Hakuba?" Odin opened his mouth wide and laughed. The pirates stopped paying attention to Jinan and the others, and all ran towards Odin, lifting him high up. They genuinely recognized this like-minded man, how could they not be happy that the other party could join their big family? "Dad really put you through a lot, hey? After suffering so much, you've finally joined us, it's truly a cause for celebration." Looking at his crew members who were making fun of him, Whitebeard was a little dumbfounded. "You guys!" Odin, who had been put down by the crowd, saw his two old friends, Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, "Why are you here?" The pirates looked surprised, someone stowed away. Nekomamushi smiled, "We knew that Odin-sama would definitely get on the ship, so we hid on the ship." Whitebeard looked at Izo, who was indignant at him, and turned to Jinan and the others and asked. "You guys want to go to Wano country, right?" Toki nodded frantically upon hearing this, "That's right, you promised to take us there." Whitebeard shook his head with a look of resistance, he didn't want to go to Wano country again. "I'm not going, but I can arrange for these stowaways to go back with you." Izo and Nekomamushi instantly felt unhappy. "Why? We are all retainers of Odin-sama, wherever he goes, we go." Nekomamushi glanced at Jinan and the others, "We don't know them, even if they want to go to Wano country, it's none of our business." Toki looked at Odin and the others in disbelief, she never expected that meeting compatriots from Wano country after 800 years would be like this, unwilling to even give directions. We just want you to point us in the right direction." As long as they didn't have to leave Odin, Izo and the others were much kinder. Nekomamushi patted his chest, making a paw-paw sound. "So that's it, giving directions is no problem at all, leave it to me." To be honest, Toki didn't have as much anticipation for Wano country anymore. However, if she didn't go there, wouldn't all her hard work be in vain? "Odin, are you the daimyo of the Kojiki family of this generation?" Jinan asked curiously. He heard that Nekomamushi and the others were all acting as retainers of Odin, and as far as he knew, the Kojiki family was the only family at the top of Wano country. Odin proudly raised his head and said smugly, "That's right, my name is Kojiki Odin." Toki's beautiful eyes flashed, "As the daimyo of Wano country, shouldn't you stay there and learn how to govern the country? My father is still governing the country, the sea is a man's romance, I just hope to be able to sail freely on the sea in the future." Odin opened his arms and embraced the sea in front of him. "But, you are the heir, the future of the country rests on your shoulders." Toki couldn't agree with the other party's idea. She couldn't agree with abandoning the future of an entire country's people for one's own dreams. Odin didn't care and laughed, "With my father's physical condition, he can live for another 30 or 40 years without any problems. Taking over the country is too far away from me." Jinan looked at Odin with the same look as if he was looking at an idiot. The things the other party did seemed quite outrageous to him. Although he liked to slack off, he never missed anything he should do, and he would feel guilty when he was a hands-off manager. He couldn't be as free as the other party. Whitebeard waved at Jinan and led his family towards the Moby Dick. "Well then, kid, we'll see you next time." Chapter 72. So this is the land of Wano. Toki Amatsuki strolled along a street where cherry blossoms danced in the air. The houses lining the street were just like the ones she lived in 800 years ago. All in the waffu style. Having arrived at the place she had longed for, her mood was not as happy as she had imagined. Jinan stood in front of a shop, his hand gently resting on the old wooden door. The dappled light of the trees fell on his face, forming scattered patches of light. "Now that I've brought you to your destination, we'll be leaving first." Jinan didn't want to stay here any longer, he didn't have a good feeling about this place. Moreover, after arriving in Wano country, he knew where he should go next. The frustrating thing was that there were no den mushi for sale here. After all, this country practiced isolationism, and almost nothing from the outside could get in. "Haven't we only been in Wano country for a short time?" Toki Amatsuki struggled slightly. Her heart was full of contradictions, and she forced a smile at the corner of her mouth. Toki stopped, looking at Jinan's back. A trace of reluctance appeared in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth trembled slightly, as if she had 1,000 words to say but didn't know where to start. She gently bit her lower lip, as if something was blocking her throat. She reached out her hand, as if wanting to touch him, but ultimately did not take that step. Jinan turned around, his eyes meeting hers, and he could feel her reluctance. After all, in this world, she only had Jinan and his friends. He nodded slightly, "Yes, but I've lost contact with my subordinates and friends for too long." Toki hesitated slightly, but still stepped forward, condensing all the unspoken gratitude into a hug. "Thank you, this journey has become less lonely because of you." A gust of wind blew, carrying the petals around them, as if to add a bit of poetry to this farewell. Watching his back gradually become blurred in the crowd, Toki felt a trace of unease in her heart. Hesitating for a few seconds, she took a deep breath, and the unease about the future ignited the courage to act in her heart. The various sounds in the air seemed to be silent in an instant, and only her heartbeat remained in the entire world. She understood that what she desired was not just the companionship of this journey, but also facing the countless sceneries that might be encountered in the future together with him. Even if there was still some uncertainty in her heart, it was not enough to stop her from moving forward. "Who?" Taking a deep breath, as if to store the entire fragrance of flowers and fresh air in her chest, she raised her head, her eyes firmly following his steps. The moment she made the decision, all the hesitation and fear were crushed by her clenched hands and scattered on the path behind her. She was no longer the woman standing at the intersection, confused and watching. Past thoughts could no longer bind her actions. She was no longer someone who lived for Wano country. "Hey! Jinan!" She shouted loudly at the figure that was about to disappear. Jinan was a little strange, but he stopped anyway. He didn't know what Toki wanted to stop him for. Their intersection should have ended. The woman stood in front of him, her hands holding the branches of the cherry tree, her fingertips slightly white. Her breathing, which was more rapid than usual, revealed a sense of exhaustion that had almost used up all her strength, but a firm light burned in her eyes. "I want to see the places I've never been to." Her voice was low and powerful, telling of her inner expectations. Her words carried a determination to move forward. "The outside world must be very broad, I want to see it, I want to see that unfamiliar world." Jinan looked at her strangely, these words shouldn't be coming from her mouth. After spending this time together, he knew what kind of feelings Toki had for Wano country. Logically speaking, there was no way she could make this decision. You have to think carefully, I might not come to Wano country again in the future. Toki nodded heavily. Of course I've thought it through, this place has already left my footprints, I can't find a reason to continue staying here. Toki lightly released her hand that was tightly holding the branch, and looked at the people of this country. She took a deep breath, as if to suck all the air circulating in this area into her chest. She clenched her already sweaty fists, then slowly relaxed them, as if reaching a reconciliation with the unease in her heart. Let's go. She turned around, looking at the road leading to the coast. Every step seemed so heavy yet solid, as if laying out her own path. Behind her, Jinan quietly watched her. He did not continue to stop her, but silently followed behind her towards the sea. Sorbet Kingdom. Kuzan was anxiously waiting for news from headquarters. Kuzan bro, still no news from Jinan bro. Kuma looked at the Viva card in his hand, his heart full of worry for Jinan. Kuzan shook his head helplessly, not yet, that anglerfish seems to have disappeared from this world, no one has seen it continue to appear at all. After that battle ended, they immediately rushed to the place where the two had fought, but unfortunately, nothing was left on the vast sea. Looking at the state of the Viva card, there's no need to worry about his safety, but why hasn't he contacted us for so long? Kuzan was at his wit's end. Buru buru buru. Buru buru buru. The two looked at each other, and Kuzan immediately answered the Den Den Mushi. Hello, this is Kuzan. Fleet Admiral Sengoku's steady voice came from the Den Den Mushi. Kuzan, there's news about that Jinan kid. Kuma's ears perked up, eager to know Jinan's situation. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, may I ask where Jinan is now? Kuzan's tone was slightly hurried. He's not in danger right now, don't worry. Sengoku continued, that guy is now in the New World. The New World? Kuzan exclaimed. Sengoku covered his ears and silently moved the Den Den Mushi away a little. That's impossible. Kuma was dumbfounded. Recently, they had joined the Marines and had a basic understanding of the Grand Line. That place was a place that ate people without spitting out bones. The news is correct, it was sent by someone from the Marines who was planted in the Whitebeard Pirates. Sengoku said firmly. The Whitebeard Pirates. Kuzan and Kuma felt that their brains were not working enough. How was this matter still involving that terrifying pirate group? Sengoku also had a headache, reached out and pressed on his temples, and continued. I have already asked the Marines of the G5 branch to pay attention to his news, the rest depends on his luck. If he was lucky enough to meet the people from the G5 branch, they could just bring that kid back to Marine headquarters. If he was unlucky, then, there was nothing to say. Chapter 73. Waves rolled, and the salty sea breeze stimulated every cell in my body. Jinan! Jinan! Look! Olga rushed to Jinan's side, pointing to the front of the ship they were on. Olga, you're over 200 years old. When will you be able to calm down? Jinan was dragged by Olga to the front of the ship. When he saw the ship ahead, he couldn't help but curse. Damn, finally seeing a warship. A blurry shadow appeared where the sea and sky met. Vaguely, the outline and sails of the ship became clearer and clearer, and the Navy's logo was particularly striking in the afterglow of the setting sun. Jinan's spirits lifted, and a gleam flashed in his eyes. He immediately realized that this was an opportunity to escape this sea area. They had been drifting at sea for nearly a month, and the food in the plundered pirate ship's inventory had long been exhausted. Now they were living on various fish in the sea. At first, Jinan directly took the 3 people and several aquatic lizards through the air at high speed, but after flying for a few days, they did not see any new islands. In the end, they could only randomly select a lucky pirate ship as their temporary resting place. At this time, the 4 people gathered on the deck, looking at the warship in the distance together. The eyes of the 4 people met at this moment. Without words, they could understand each other's thoughts. G5. Olga stood on tiptoe and finally saw the words on the warship's sail clearly. Is this the name of your Navy unit? Toki Amatsuki was not so familiar with the Navy. That's right. Jinan returned to the middle of the ship, strenuously adjusting the sails, guiding the pirate ship towards the oncoming warship. We won't be mistaken for pirates and sunk by them, will we? Ashir looked at the pirate flag fluttering in the wind, his heart trembling uneasily with the flag. Don't be afraid, the Navy won't open fire casually, Jinan assured. The waves gradually rolled up white foam, and the shadow of the warship became closer and closer on the sea. Toki Amatsuki and Olga looked forward to it, their hearts beating faster as the distance shortened, their eyes sparkling, because they knew that they could eat fresh food. Rumble. Countless shells spewed out from the G5 warship, directly shattering the ship Jinan and the others were on. Aa! Olga and the others screamed loudly, grabbing the railing and about to fall into the sea. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew, and the 3 people who were falling were gently lifted by the wind and suspended in the air. The warship's artillery fire continued, and the shells sealed off the entire area where Jinan and the others were located in an instant. Jinan slashed out with his sword, and all the shells were split in half in an instant and fell into the sea. The warship in front, we have no malice, stop firing. A loud roar spread throughout the sea, and the world seemed to stop at this moment, falling into a silence. But it was only quiet for that moment. After that, the warship continued to fire shells continuously. They seem to think we are pirates. Toki Amatsuki shouted loudly in the sound of gunfire. Jinan also knew that it was the pirate ship they were on that made the other party attack at all costs. Now, they could only get closer to the warship and then explain. He stepped on the air, and his whole person was like an arrow leaving the string, rushing towards the warship. He launched an attack on the navy. After a moment. I've explained it very clearly, right? Jinan looked down at the navimen who were tied up with ropes, explaining for the 4th time helplessly. You've already tied us up, and you still want to deceive us. That's right, if you want to kill us, just do it directly. What's the point of saying so much? If my head falls off, it's just a big scar. I wouldn't be a man if I even groaned. The naviman lay on the deck, glaring at Jinan and the others. I'm a navy. You guys kept pointing guns at us. For safety, I had no choice but to tie you up. Jinan covered his head. He found that he couldn't communicate with these navimen at all. It was useless to repeat it so many times. What exactly was in these navimen's heads? The navimen obviously didn't believe it. It all went in one ear and out the other. Uncle, do you understand navigation knowledge? Toki Amatsuki walked out of the warship's control room, holding a permanent pointer in her hand. Ashir shook his head. Although he was a scientist, navigation touched on his blind spot. Oh, a permanent pointer. Jinan's eyes lit up, and he took the thing from Toki Amatsuki's hand and examined it carefully. With this thing, we won't get lost. Toki Amatsuki was a little helpless when she heard Jinan's words. It seems that none of us know how to drive a warship. Moreover, we don't know where this permanent pointer is pointing. If we follow the pointer, will we encounter any danger? What Toki Amatsuki said was not a problem for Jinan. Although he couldn't be said to be proficient in these things, he still knew a little bit about everything. Driving a warship was just a piece of cake for him. Leave it all to me. Jinan patted his chest and assured. If it really didn't work, he could still use Flame Cloud to carry the warship. This little thing could be easily solved. The latter half of the Grand Line, G5 branch. Reporting, Vice Admiral, the New World is still a calm day today. A Navy was giving a daily report to the superior leaning on the sofa. Understood. Maldo waved his hand, interrupting his subordinate's report. Is there any progress on the matter that Garp told us to do? The Navy stood at attention, reporting, Vice Admiral, our patrolmen have not found anything yet. Just pay attention when patrolling, don't forget our mission. Maldo said seriously. The G5 branch is the only base of the Navy in the New World. They are stationed here for only one thing. To eliminate as many pirates as possible who enter the New World. This also means that they can only fight alone, and the help that the Navy headquarters can give them is very, very little. They are accompanied by danger every day, and the entrance of the base is covered with the corpses of pirates who attacked the base. Received. The Navy saluted and then retreated. A tired sigh came from the dim room. Sigh. The sea is getting more and more chaotic. I don't know how much longer I can last. After that, the room returned to silence. On the other side. Naviman, get up and eat. Olga hopped to the front of the Naviman. A pot of fragrant mixed stewed rice emitted an enticing aroma on the small cart behind her. The Naviman's noses twitched involuntarily, and the aroma of the rice permeated their hearts. Move the rice away. Who knows what you put in the food? That's right, we would rather starve to death today and jump off the ship than eat anything you make. Olga was too lazy to care about them. She wanted to continue eating some. She put the small cart in front of them and eagerly ran into the kitchen. Hey! Little girl, if you don't release us, how can we eat? Chapter 74. The front is our base. The Marine, holding a bowl of rice, introduced it to Olga beside him. Ooh! So dilapidated. Olga looked at the Marine base standing on the sea, feeling a burning sensation in her eyes. Little girl, although we have a good relationship, you can't slander our magnificent Marine base. The Marine immediately retorted upon hearing Olga's words. In their eyes, the base represents safety, comrades fighting together, and a place to settle down. But I really didn't expect the Marines to stay in this kind of place. Olga said weakly. The faint light of dawn had yet to pierce through the heavy sea fog, and a strange silence enveloped the entire area. Jinan and the others stood together on the deck of the warship, looking at the gradually revealing outline of the Marine base. A sea breeze blew, bringing with it a mixture of salty and rotten smells. The gates of the Marine base were tightly closed, like a dead zone with no living beings. The scars left on the base told the newcomers of the disaster that had occurred here. The walls were broken, part of the bunker had collapsed, and black smoke was still rising slowly in a corner. And the most shocking thing was the corpses scattered outside the base. The corpses were either lying scattered or maintained their last fighting posture, silently telling those who came here that a fierce battle had once taken place here. A veteran Marine on the ship pointed to those silent bodies and explained in a hoarse voice. These are all the pirates who died attacking this base. We Marines also suffered heavy losses. Outside this base, every once in a while, some pirates will rush into the base to burn, kill, and loot. The Marine clenched his fists, letting the sea breeze mess up his hair. The dilapidated base and scattered corpses, all of this constituted the heavy scene before them. Despite the brutal and cruel reality before him, Jinan knew that as soldiers, their duty was to face danger at all times. All they could do was work hard to improve their strength and prevent tragedy from happening again. The Marine waved his hand, signaling the team to follow him ashore. Tian Yushi's expression was stern, and Olga and Ashia nodded silently. No words were needed between the four of them, eye contact was enough to convey information. As the morning sun rose and the mist dissipated, they stepped forward towards the dilapidated Marine base, each step as heavy as 1,000 pounds. The scene inside the base was even more tragic than imagined, filled with the lingering smell of gunpowder and an atmosphere of sorrow. Bricks, broken glass, and bullet casings were like a dirge on the ground, telling of the fierce battle that had just passed amidst the devastation. Although the battle had passed, every surviving Marine was doing what they could, either moving supplies, repairing broken walls, or guarding the surroundings, guarding against the crisis that might come again. The appearance of Jinan and his group of four initially caused a burst of alert. These Marines had built up lines of defense, guarding their remaining territory. They were exhausted but still maintained a strong fighting spirit, and any unusual movement could become a new threat. However, after confirming that the newcomers were on their side, the vigilant gazes gradually softened. Some Marines nodded, and some even tried to squeeze out a smile, expressing the unspoken comfort and encouragement between comrades. Although the base was broken, the morale was not lost. Tian Yushi and the others walked forward along the corridor that had been destroyed by the ruins. Each place they passed made their hearts heavier, but at the same time strengthened their determination to join the Marines. And the Marines in the base returned to their posts and continued their busy work. Our Vice Admiral is in this office. I'll go back to my post first, the Marine who was leading the way explained to Jinan and the others, and then hurried towards the depths of the corridor. Knock, knock, knock. Jinan reached out and gently knocked on the door. An old voice came from the room, come in. The group pushed the door open and entered the office. Sitting behind the large desk was an old Marine, his skin like aged parchment, reflecting the vicissitudes of time. His eyes were framed by silver hair, and through his reading glasses, he revealed a wise light. Seeing someone coming in, the old man smiled and put down the materials in his hand, raised his head, and his piercing eyes stared at the four people in front of the desk. The old man's voice was hoarse and gentle, welcome to the G5 branch. I am Maldu, the person in charge of this branch. Please sit down. You are not Marines from our branch, so don't be so restrained. His words were brief, but revealed his friendliness to Jinan and the others. Jinan and his companions exchanged glances tacitly, and then sat down one by one, ready to listen to what arrangements this old Marine, who had experienced countless storms, would give them. You are the little guy Kapu mentioned, Maldu said, looking directly at Jinan, with a hint of interest in his eyes. Jinan nodded, That's me. After building a good relationship with the Marines on the warship, he heard them say that Kapu had privately asked their Vice Admiral to help find Jinan and the others. Now that he had met the Vice Admiral himself, Jinan felt very grateful. The old man's eyes contained a hint of imperceptible anxiety. He leaned slightly forward from his chair, placed his hands lightly on the desk, and stared straight at the protagonist and the others. I have a request. Maldu said, his voice steady but full of strength. The urgency of the war seemed to be concentrated on his old face at this moment, and every wrinkle was like a deep gully, recording the base's predicament and the urgency of seeking help. I know this is a big request. But our situation is really not optimistic. We are short of supplies and personnel. We are about to collapse. If the Marine headquarters can give us more support, we can continue to defend this sea area. His eyes swept across Jinan's faces one by one, as if trying to read a trace of hope from their young faces. I believe your arrival is not accidental. Your talents and your performance during this period have proven your worth. The Marshal has always been generous in his praise for excellent soldiers, so... Maldu paused slightly, took a deep breath, and continued. If you can say a few good words for us in front of the Marshal, even just a few words, I believe he will consider it. All the men, women, old and young here will be grateful for your great kindness. Jinan and the others exchanged glances, reaching a consensus almost without words. They knew that this was not only the old man's request, but also his responsibility for those helpless lives in the war. Jinan stood up. Chapter 75. The moment Jinan and his group left the G5 branch, everyone in the entire branch ran out to watch. Their figures gradually disappeared, bumping along the dilapidated rebel road, with the silent farewell of the Navy soldiers behind them. A warship was docked on the coast, not the latest model but very well maintained. Its side was engraved with faint traces, the bravery and glory of confronting pirates. The warship was steadily docked at the pier, waiting for their arrival. Jinan walked onto the deck, gripped the railing tightly, and felt the refreshing sea breeze. As the captain gave the order to set sail, the anchor was raised, and the ship cut through the waves. The warship slowly left the port. Under the clear sky, the silhouette of the departing ship and the azure sea formed a unique picture. Jinan and his companions stood on the deck, their eyes passing through the crests and troughs of the waves, as if they could see the distant and solemn outline of the Navy headquarters. Sorbet Kingdom. Kuzan, Ginny, take care of yourselves. Kuzan packed his luggage and instructed Kuma and Ginny who were beside him. Why did the Navy headquarters suddenly summon you? Ginny asked, puzzled. They had been in the Navy for a year and had a clear understanding of the Navy headquarters. Ordinary people can't go to the headquarters. Only those who have made great contributions or have special talents can be summoned by the headquarters. It seems that the last large-scale recruitment led to a shortage of officers at the Navy headquarters, but I should report to the training camp first. Kuzan didn't know much either, just heard some rumors. Are you going to be promoted? Ginny asked, pressing further. Now their small group is gradually getting on track, and everyone has made a career. Kuzan grinned and said, maybe, but they should transfer my rank to the headquarters. Yay, besides brother Jinan, we have another big shot to rely on in the future. Ginny cheered, jumping with joy. Kuzan, congratulations. Dragon received the news and rushed over from the base to congratulate him. Kuzan patted Dragon on the chest and scolded with a smile, you came from the headquarters, stop teasing me. After a long time of getting along, the two had become close friends who could talk about anything, and banter was common. Dragon laughed, I'm serious. Going to the Navy headquarters is very beneficial for your future development. The Navy headquarters gathers most of the naval elites in this world, which is very beneficial for personal development, and you can also meet more like-minded people. It's a pity that only you can go. Dragon sighed. It wasn't that he wanted to return to the Navy headquarters, but he felt sorry that he couldn't accompany his close friend. You don't have to worry about me. On the contrary, after I leave, the work here will be on you guys. Kuzan replied nonchalantly. The Sorbet Kingdom is my second hometown, and now the South Sea is calm and there is nothing to deal with. Leave the matter here to us. Dragon is very confident in his current ability to handle affairs. He is no longer the rookie he used to be. It's a good thing Shanks went out to teach today, otherwise he would have made a fuss when he saw you leaving, Kuma joked. Shanks has grown a lot too. He's already a teacher and won't care about this little separation. Kuzan's eyes flashed with a hint of pride at the sight of that red-haired little adult. He had watched Shanks grow up since he was a child, and fortunately, he didn't turn out bad. That guy Jinan is probably enjoying the good life at the Navy headquarters. Kuzan murmured. With Jinan's personality, he's probably enjoying life, Dragon agreed. The warship sailed through the waves, crossing the endless sea. Jinan, Toki, and the others stood on the deck, enjoying the warm sunshine, washing away the fatigue of the journey. Captain Jinan, we'll be at Marineford soon, the Navy informed them. It only took a week to get here, that's pretty fast, Jinan said in surprise. They looked into the distance, where the sea and sky met, and the majestic Navy headquarters gradually became clear, like the entrance to the new world, opening its huge and sacred arms. The vice-captain was explaining the magnificent structure and profound history of the Navy headquarters to Toki and the others, every word filled with pride and respect. The golden light reflected by the sun rising from the horizon framed the base with gold, further highlighting its solemnity and grandeur. As the warship got closer and closer to the Navy headquarters, the huge base became even more spectacular. The warship slowly docked at the port of the Navy headquarters, the heavy hull forming a solid shadow with the shore. The navies stood in a row, solemnly bidding farewell on the bridge. We can only send you here. There's still a pile of things waiting for us at G5. Go back, we'll go directly to the headquarters. Jinan waved goodbye to these respectable navies. Jinan and his group walked on the road leading to the naval center, their eyes forward, the bustling shops on both sides of the road like seashells on the beach, each exuding a unique brilliance. Pedestrians came and went, the shouts of vendors, the conversations of merchants, and the laughter of children, converged into a vibrant symphony. The naval center at the end of the road, like an unreachable mountain, stood in the depths of the field of vision. The smooth stone walls reflected a soft light in the sunlight, and the two characters' navy appeared sacred and solemn. Walking through the bustling street, the Navy headquarters gate stood in front of them, like the weight of history, heavily engraved with countless stories of glory and hardship. Their steps paused slightly in front of the door, gazing at the towering lintel. Is this the Navy's sacred place, Marineford? Olga exclaimed. Standing under this huge building, one truly realizes the enormity of the headquarters. A Navy in neat uniform stepped forward and asked about the origins of the people in front of him. Hello, this is the Navy headquarters. Is there anything you need to do here? I am South Sea Admiral Jinan, I need to enter the headquarters to find Admiral Sengoku, Jinan said truthfully. So you are South Sea Admiral, I have long admired your name. You are an example for many of our navies. A hint of recognition flashed in the Navy's eyes. He leaned slightly, gesturing for Jinan and the others to follow him. Please come with me, Admiral Sengoku has already instructed us that you can go directly in when you arrive. His steps were firm, as if every step reflected the glory and responsibility of the naval rhythm. Jinan and his companions followed closely behind, crossing the 1,000-pound gate, as if crossing a barrier of an era, stepping onto a brand new stage. Admiral Sengoku, Captain Jinan has arrived. Chapter 76. Marine Headquarters, Marineford, Admiral's Office. Jin, is this why you appeared in the New World and encountered Whitebeard? Sengoku asked, his mouth wide open, looking at Jinan in disbelief. How could this guy's experiences during this time be so exciting, making him, who sits in the office every day, extremely envious? That's right, I didn't expect it myself. I didn't expect to encounter so many troubles while patrolling the sea. Fortunately, I'm lucky, otherwise you wouldn't see me, Jinan said with a face of rejoicing. It's also because he is relatively strong. If other people encounter these things, it is estimated that the grass on their graves would be 10 feet tall. But thanks to the pirate he encountered being Whitebeard, if he encountered Kaido or Big Mom, it probably wouldn't have ended so easily. Have you forgotten? I just asked you to patrol the world government-affiliated countries in the South Sea, who asked you to approach the calm belt without authorization. Sengoku looked at Jinan's expression and knew that the other party had no intention of reflecting at all, and slammed the table and roared. Jinan was taken aback, and turned his eyes around several times without thinking of a way to get away with it. What tricks are you playing again? I can tell you, if you dare to disobey my orders again, I will send you to the New World. Sengoku warned, seeing that this kid did not repent. Jinan's eyes lit up, there is such a good thing. Going to the New World, he could just find a small island to live in seclusion, wouldn't life be wonderful in the future? You. Sengoku's forehead was throbbing with veins, speechless to the guy in front of him. Other Marines were thinking about how to get promoted, but Jinan was just thinking about slacking off all day long. Ha ha ha, Sengoku, everyone has their own ambitions, it's useless for you to force him. Garp, who was watching the excitement, grabbed a handful of senbei and put it in his mouth, acting as a peacemaker. He was watching the excitement, and he didn't want to interrupt, but who told this kid to give him 2 fingers, for the good life in the future, he was willing to take the lead. This is their secret code, 2 fingers represent 2 warehouses of special delicacies. In order not to be nagged by Sengoku, Jinan had no choice but to resort to this. What's your business here, don't come and make trouble for me. Sengoku said irritably, do you think I didn't see your little tricks? He paused, and continued, Jinan, I also want a copy of what you promised Garp. Jinan's eyes were subtle, he didn't expect you to be such a Sengoku. Okay, if there's nothing else, you can leave. Sengoku waved his hand to let the 2 leave, like he was chasing away flies. Wait a minute, I still have something to say. Jinan still had something to do, and said quickly. Sengoku frowned, what else do you want? He really has a headache for this kid now, his ability to cause trouble is even stronger than Garp. The person in charge of the G5 branch said that they have no money and no people, let me tell you. Jinan said, although those people looked like pirates, the things they did made him feel extremely admired. I have already received Mald's report on this matter, and we will give them an answer. Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that Jinan was talking about this matter. Let's go, kid, if you don't leave, Sengoku will kick us out. Garp directly grabbed Jinan's hand and dragged him out of the office. But I still want to discuss the matter of the 2 fingers with him. Jinan looked at the door of the office reluctantly. Garp looked at Jinan with a bad expression, you kid wants to go back on your word. He was drooling over the food of the Sorbet Kingdom. If Jinan dared to go back on his word, he wouldn't mind letting the other party taste his iron fist of love. No, no. Jinan shook his head repeatedly, looking at Garp's eager posture. Garp showed a satisfied smile, that's good. Outside the magnificent gate of the Marine headquarters, a group of people gathered together. The sunlight hit Jun's face, making his eyes brighter. Holding a delicate ring in his hand, it was a gift he had carefully selected for a long time. He took a deep breath and walked slowly towards Jun, his eyes full of determination and enthusiasm. Jun, please marry me. Jun turned her head when she heard the sound, a trace of impatience flashed in her eyes, not again, right? She gently held the saber around her waist, turned around, faced Jun, and kept a smile on her pretty face, but it was difficult to hide the disgust in her beautiful eyes. Jun, this is the 100th time you've confessed, but my answer will not change, so don't bother me. Jun's voice was light, but like a sharp knife, it directly pierced the softest part of Jun's heart. Jun's face changed slightly, but soon returned to a smile. He walked closer, trying to reduce the distance between the two, his eyes full of reluctance and pleading. Jun, I know you are tired of it, but my heart will not change, I will always wait until you agree. His voice was low and firm, Jun was an obsession he couldn't let go of. Jun shook her head gently, took a step back, and kept a distance from him. Her expression was calm, but her heart was filled with irritability. She didn't understand why he wouldn't let go, wasn't her refusal already very clear? The air solidified between the two, like an insurmountable gap. The hand holding the ring tightly trembled slightly, it was the loss of his suppressed emotions not being recognized. Jun, no one in this world will love you like I do. He insisted again, his voice revealing the final struggle. Jun took a deep breath, calming the irritability in her heart. Jun, what I need is not a stubborn person who loves me, but someone who can give me freedom and happiness. I cannot repay your love. Her words were sonorous and powerful, wanting to cut off all entanglements. Jun looked at her silently, a trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. He knew that this marriage proposal, like the previous 99 times, also ended in failure. His hand trembled slightly, gently lifted the ring, and finally put it in front of Jun helplessly, this is just a simple gift, please accept it. The road instantly became extremely quiet. The Marines who were watching the marriage proposal nearby looked at Jun with pity. Although they had seen the other party fail too many times, they still felt sorry for Jun. Colonel Jun is too miserable. It's a pity that he still couldn't pick the high mountain flower of our Marine headquarters. Jun covered his face, seemingly to cover up the sadness in his heart, and looked directly at Jun. I will not give up. If you don't agree 100 times, I will come 200 times, 300 times, I will definitely impress you. Colonel Jun, we support you. You are our role model. The Marines were moved by Jun's persistence and spoke out in support of him. It's really lively here. Garp grabbed Jin An's shoulder, squeezed into the Marines, and checked what was happening in front. Seeing the situation in front clearly, he gloated, Jun, it's you again. It looks like you failed again, ha 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 ha. Old man Garp, what are you doing pulling me here to join in the fun? Jinan disliked pulling away Garp's hand. He's so old, and he still likes to join in the fun so much. What can Jinan do with such an elder? Jinan. Before he finished speaking, a figure with fragrant wind instantly came in front of Jinan. Chapter 77. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between the towering flagpoles, casting dappled shadows, creating an unusually tranquil atmosphere in the Marine Headquarters Plaza. The usual hustle and bustle added a touch of vibrancy to the solemn space. Kaji half kneeling on the ground, Jun looking helpless, and Marines who didn't mind the commotion formed a peculiar scene. Just as Jun's mind stirred, a familiar yet unfamiliar figure entered her sight. It was a man of average height, wearing a Marine uniform. Although many years had passed, his face remained resolute, yet time had etched more maturity onto his features, causing her heart to skip a beat. This was the person who had rescued her from the flames and smoke, now reappearing in her world. Their eyes met in the vast crowd, and Jun's excitement was beyond words. Is it really you? She murmured to herself. Jun hesitated, her heart racing with an indescribable excitement and a longing that had been buried deep within her for many years. She remembered that night of thunder and lightning when this man charged into the pirate fleet, risking everything to save her. Of course, she wasn't the only one rescued at the time, but that person had left an indelible mark on her life. And now, that figure she could never forget was suddenly standing before her. How could she not be excited? The distance between them gradually shortened, and when Jun arrived in front of Jinan, her eyes were filled with memories of the past and the joy of their reunion. Jun reached out her hand, trembling slightly. A nearly imperceptible smile appeared on her lips as she thought, we've finally met again. A trace of contemplation flickered in Jin An's eyes. He reached out and slowly grasped the hand offered to him. You are Jun? Hello. He couldn't find any related memories in his mind, but he knew the famous Toki. His reaction made Jun a little disappointed, but she didn't show it on her face. I am Jun. I've always looked up to you as an idol, Admiral Jin An. Kaji also walked over. Jun's idol. After clearly seeing Jin An's face, Kaji frowned, thinking, how can this kid be so handsome? He's almost catching up to me. He's going to be a big problem. I have to keep Jun away from this guy. Jun, a nice new restaurant opened outside the headquarters recently. Let's go try it together, Kaji invited with a smile. Jun ignored Kaji, her eyes scanning back and forth between Jinan. Cough, cough. Garp coughed lightly. He really couldn't stand it anymore. Could it be that Jinan had some unknown past with Jun? Hearing Garp's cough, Jun quickly came back to her senses, and a blush unconsciously appeared on her cheeks. Vice Admiral Garp, hello, she said, using a greeting to divert her embarrassment. Don't mind me, I'm just here to join the fun. You guys continue. Garp said, picking his nose and winking. Jun turned her head unnaturally. She had long heard of Garp's nosy personality, and this was the first time she had witnessed it. I'm just greeting an acquaintance. I didn't do anything. Kaji's eyes were about to pop out. He had never seen Jun like this before. What had turned a heroic Marine colonel into this? He knew that this had only happened after Jinan appeared. Envy and jealousy were about to erupt from his eyes. Kaji wanted to rush up and fight him. Jinan also realized that the atmosphere here was not right, and thought, am I interrupting their confession? It looks like I can't stay here long. He knew how ridiculously in love Kaji was with Jun, confessing for decades without giving up. To say it wasn't true love, Jinan he couldn't be sure. Seeing the look in Kaji's eyes, Jinan couldn't help but shudder. It was too terrifying. Jun, Kaji, Vice Admiral Garp and I still have some things to deal with, so I'll take my leave first, Jinan said, putting his arm around Garp and hurrying away from this place of trouble. Watching Jinan leave quickly, Jun felt a little lost, her eyes fixed on the place where he disappeared. Alas! In the end, she still didn't recognize him. However, it had been a long time since she was rescued, so it was normal for him to forget. She comforted herself in her heart. Hey! Jun, they've been gone for a long time. Kaji stomped his short legs and waved his hands in front of Jun's dazed eyes. Why are you still here? Jun asked, looking at the comical Kaji in confusion. She seemed to have heard Kaji say he was going to eat something. Now that she saw him still here, she couldn't help but feel strange. Kaji felt as if Jun's words were like a sharp blade, piercing his heart through and through. I've been here all along. Jun didn't care. I'm going back. Just do whatever you need to do. After speaking, she strode towards the headquarters with her long legs, not waiting for Kaji to reply. She was going to ask Sister Tsuru why Jinan came here and how long he would stay. He. Kaji stood alone in place, his body as if it had turned to stone. He felt like he had been abandoned by the world. It's all your fault for joining in the fun. Now you've affected other people. Jinan said as he walked. Garp didn't care at all. I didn't affect anything. On the contrary, as soon as someone appeared there, they completely destroyed the atmosphere that Kaji had worked so hard to create. I didn't. Jinan instinctively wanted to refute, but after thinking carefully about the situation at the time, it seemed that this was indeed the case. Honestly, what is your relationship with Jun? A gleam of light appeared in Garp's eyes. He was very curious. This is the first time I've met her. I don't know if Jun has mistaken me for someone else. Jinan really had no impression. If he had met such a beauty, he would definitely not forget her. Moreover, he had no thoughts about women now. Wouldn't it be better to spend that time cultivating in the training space a little longer? Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. I can't understand your generation. Garp laughed loudly. He suddenly brought his head close to Jinan and said, I say, why don't you open a shop in Marineford? That way you can make a lot of money. Jinan rolled his eyes. If you want to eat, just say it directly. Why go to so much trouble? We'll see. Chapter 78. While Jin was enjoying life in Marineford, changes were quietly taking place around the world. Somewhere in the new world, Whitebeard looked at the newspaper in his hand, his expression unchanged. That golden lion hasn't shown his face yet, looks like he was hurt badly this time, gura ra. He picked up his wine bowl and drank it down, casually putting the finished newspaper aside. He was ambushed by multiple parties, I reckon he'll make a big splash when he comes out next time. Marco said with a smile. He knew that Dad and Golden Lion had been in contact ever since the Rocks Pirates disbanded, and he was also well aware of what kind of personality the other party had. Gura ra he is indeed such a person, but, what he does is none of our business, let's continue the banquet. Whitebeard directly grabbed the wine jar and poured wine into his mouth. Banquet, banquet. The pirates continued to eat meat and drink in large gulps. They just needed to be happy, and didn't bother to care about other things. On the other side, New World, Whole Cake Island. Charlotte Linlin, who had already gained a foothold in the New World, put down the newspaper, crumbs from the dessert she had eaten still on her lips. Kaido, have you decided to go to Wano country? Charlotte Linlin's oppressive voice echoed in the palace. I don't need to report to you if I want to go there, Linlin, Kaido said while drinking from his sake gourd. You better think carefully before you speak, Charlotte Linlin's glittering eyes narrowed slightly. Of course I've thought it through. Kaido didn't care about the other party's threat, and continued drinking his wine. I've stayed here with you long enough, Linlin, and I want to go out and get some fresh air. As for you, Linlin, you should eat less sweets, your figure is not as good as before. Kaido said with a hint of regret. It's not your turn to teach me how to do things. Charlotte Linlin didn't care at all. How's your devil fruit ability training going? A yellow flame covered Kaido's arm. A mere devil fruit, I will naturally master it quickly. You must cherish this ability, I spent a lot of effort on this fruit. Charlotte Linlin glanced at Kaido, somewhat dissatisfied with his attitude. Linlin, devil fruit ability is just one of the auxiliary powers. You can't dominate the world by relying on abilities alone. This world has its own rules, just like Roger, he wasn't a devil fruit user, but he still defeated Captain Rocks. Kaido clenched his fists, only Haki can stand above everything else. Oh. Charlotte Linlin said lightly, then give me back the Tori Tori no Mi, model, new. Ha ha ha, I'll give it back to you in my next life. Kaido wasn't stupid. Speaking of fruits, have you found the guy who ate the azure dragon fruit? Kaido asked. What he wanted most was that fruit. That ability could greatly enhance his physique. If he really couldn't find that person, he wouldn't have chosen to eat this Tori Tori no Mi. Charlotte Linlin thought of the guy who gave her first defeat, and gritted her silver teeth. Not yet. If I had found him, I would have crushed his bones to ashes. Kaido nodded and said nothing more. Marine Headquarters, Marine Ford. Douglas Barrett has been confirmed to have joined the Roger Pirates. Let's hear it. What are your opinions? Kong, the commander-in-chief, sat at the head of the conference room, arms crossed, and asked calmly. Commander-in-Chief Kong, I think we should immediately organize people to find their whereabouts. We can't let Roger's pirate group continue to grow. A burly vice admiral with an angry face stood up and said anxiously. Don't get so worked up, Vice Admiral Chris. Garp took a sip of water and said calmly. Vice Admiral Garp, how can we not be anxious? Roger's momentum is unstoppable. Chris argued. Although we have expanded our army now, it is still a bit beyond our ability to send a group of elites into the New World. Zifa sighed. He agreed with Garp's idea. Jin, this is your first time participating in this kind of meeting, tell us your opinion. Kong directly named him to answer the question. Jin stood up with a dazed expression. When did it become his turn, a small colonel, to speak at this kind of meeting? I think both viewpoints are very good, so everything is up to our wise and mighty Commander-in-Chief Kong to decide. After he finished speaking, he immediately sat down. He was just a soy sauce making little navy, and didn't want to participate in the big shots conversation. Everyone present was shocked by Jin's speech. He didn't offer any suggestions, just flattered him and left. It was really amazing. Kong was also stunned for a moment. He thought Jin could give some suggestions, but unexpectedly, that's it. Sengoku knocked on the table to quiet the discussing naval generals. This matter can't be rushed. The pirates on Roger's ship are by no means ordinary people. Rashly attacking will only benefit other pirates. Let's wait and see. There was one thing he didn't say. The Roger pirates were much more law-abiding than other pirate groups, and it was not worth the effort to solve such a pirate group. Then do as Sengoku says. Kong made a decision. After speaking, he saw a person standing up below, looking at him with a wry smile. Zifa, what's the matter? Zifa smiled freely and easily. Commander-in-Chief Kong, I want to focus on cultivating the next generation of the Navy. Aren't you already working at the school? Kong asked in confusion. I want to work full-time as a recruit instructor. Zifa insisted. Now he was a little tired, especially a year ago when his wife and children were almost killed by pirates, but fortunately Dragon and Kuzan arrived in time. This also made him want to take on a position where he could often be with his family. About this matter, give me some time to think about it, Kong said with a slightly helpless expression. Originally, there were only 2 admirals in the Navy now. If another one resigned, wouldn't he, the Commander-in-Chief, become a figurehead? Kong adopted a delaying tactic. You can put aside the affairs here and spend more time with your wife and children. You should still hold the position of admiral for the time being. Zifa also knew Kong's difficulties, so he could only continue to sit back. Jin! Kong shouted loudly. Here! What are your orders, Commander-in-Chief Kong? Jin stood up again. He was also convinced that he was named twice in one meeting. Hey! Kong looked at Jin, who was not serious, and said unhappily, if I see you hiding in the headquarters to slack off during this period of time, I will let you know how I train the Navy. Ah! I didn't slack off, it's just that there's nothing to do, Jin whispered. Oh! Kong rubbed his fists. Jin saw Kong's movements and quickly replied, guaranteed to complete the mission. Chapter 79. After a morning of intense training, Jin finally stopped to catch his breath. Under the scorching sun, the Marine Headquarters training ground was dazzling, the air thick with a mixture of dirt and heat. His clothes were completely soaked with sweat, clinging to his skin, and each breath allowed his muscles to fully relax. Just as he sat down in the shade of a tree, panting, Jun walked over. She held a bottle of water in her hand, her steps light, as if the surrounding heat had nothing to do with her. Approaching Jin, she smiled slightly and handed him the cool, thirst-quenching treasure. Good work, she said, with an undisguised concern in her voice. Jin took the water, his fingers touching the coolness from Jun's hand, and he looked up at her warm smile, nodding his thanks. You really don't have to do this for me. After spending a morning together, he also understood why Jun had reacted so strangely yesterday. "It's not too much to give your savior a bottle of water, is it?" Jun said with a charming smile. Jin looked around. This was a big problem. Didn't she see the way those people around them wanted to devour him with their eyes? It was terrifying. But the main thing was, he hadn't really done anything. Back when he hadn't joined the Marines yet, he was training alone in the South Blue. He saw a ship being besieged, grabbed his sword, and charged over. He didn't expect that there would be a future Marine Vice Admiral on that ship. "Jin, I've finished all of today's training tasks." Toki walked over from another training ground, wiping sweat with a towel as she walked. "Can we go eat after a wash?" Toki, after training, revealed a hint of fatigue as she walked to the place she had agreed to meet Jin, and then saw the tall woman sitting next to him. Was she an acquaintance of Jin's at Marine headquarters? She didn't seem to have seen her before. Before she could see the person's face clearly, a strong smell of smoke entered her nose, causing her to wrinkle it. "Jun, so you're here. I've been looking for you all morning." Kaji stepped in between Jin and Jun. Jin smiled wryly. Did this guy Kaji have to be so wary of him? He had no designs on Jun. At this moment, Toki also quietly stood behind Jin, watching the suddenly appearing man. Jun frowned slightly. "Kaji, you don't have to follow me all the time, do you?" Jun, we're always partners. And, Fleet Admiral Kong has something for the two of us to do." Kaji explained hurriedly. He wasn't lying. He was here this time because he had a mission. He considered himself a man of great discretion, and he wouldn't do anything unnecessary. What could it be? Jun muttered to herself. It had been a while since they had been summoned by the Fleet Admiral, and she felt that every time they were summoned, they would be busy for a long time. Soldiers take obedience as their duty, and when they received orders, they naturally had to obey them. "We'll go see what Fleet Admiral Kong has planned first. We'll catch up with you next time," Jun said, getting up with an apologetic expression. Jin also understood that she had things to do, and stood up as well. "Go ahead, I hope your mission goes well." Kaji and Jun were being groomed as future admirals. If their strength reached the level of an admiral in the future, the more things Steel Bones Kong arranged for them to do, the easier it would be for them to be promoted in the future. Many people in the Marines were very envious of being able to get this kind of opportunity. Although they envied Jun and her treatment, they were just envious, because Jun and she had extraordinary talents. Jin and Toki left the training ground and walked leisurely towards their residence. During his time at Marine headquarters, he had also seen many strong people who would become famous on the sea in the future. He had met Sakazuki and Borsellino once, but they weren't familiar with each other. Those two guys were currently in the Marine training camp, and it seemed that they would be able to graduate from that place in a while. It is worth mentioning that Kyuzan has also entered the training camp now, living a painful and happy life. Within the Marines, people with Logia abilities would be heavily cultivated. Under these circumstances, Kyuzan was the center of attention at headquarters, and those instructors couldn't wait to impart all their knowledge to him. Jin was the opposite. Steel Bones Kong didn't like him very much, always feeling that he was not doing his job properly. He was just a colonel, and not even ranked at headquarters. It wasn't enough for him to go out and catch some pirates to hand over, and Steel Bones Kong even set training tasks for him. Because of training, the two of them arrived at the restaurant during the peak dining hours, and it was already packed. There were many restaurants in Marine Ford, but there were even more Marines. The food here could only be said to be edible. If you wanted to enjoy food that stimulated your taste buds, you could only go to the commercial street for food made by the families of Marines. "You stay here and hold the seat, I'll go buy you some food," Jin said. After circling the restaurant 5 times and finally finding a seat, he pressed Toki into the seat and ran off to buy food. Toki was already used to Jin's arrangements. He knew what she liked to eat, and staying here to hold the seat was the best choice for her. Just as Toki was waiting in her seat, a slightly lazy voice sounded from behind her. "This is terrible, this is the only empty seat here. This beautiful lady, may I sit here?" Toki nodded, looking at the man who had already walked to the table. There was still room at the table for 4, and adding one more person was no problem at all. Getting a reply, the man wearing sunglasses sat in the seat farthest from Toki. "Thank you," Borsellino said, thanking her, and silently ate his food in his seat. After a while, Jin returned to his seat with 2 portions of food, and was stunned when he saw the person in the seat. "Yo, Isn't this the rising star Jin? To think I'd see you in the restaurant, how terrifying, Borsellino said, swallowing the food in his mouth. Jin put the food on the table and smiled helplessly. I can't be called a rising star, and I just don't come often, not that I don't come at all. Borsellino shook his head and said, Instructor Zephyr often mentions you in our ears, monster-like physique, superb swordsmanship. Except for being a little lazy, there's nothing else to complain about. In short, the instructor always has you on his lips, and our ears are getting calluses. Borsellino said with a resentful expression. Pfft. Toki couldn't help but laugh. Originally, Toki didn't react much to Zephyr praising Jin, because what he said was true. She didn't expect a twist to come later, and that last sentence was probably what Zephyr really felt in his heart. Those old guys in the Marines must have an opinion of me, Jin muttered to himself. He was very diligent, okay? It seemed that he still hadn't cultivated enough, and he would have to work harder in the future. That afternoon, Jin ran to the Fleet Admiral's office, using sharp words to get the Marines to restore his reputation. The result was obvious. Jin's arm ultimately couldn't twist his thigh, and his rebuttal was collectively ignored by those people in the Marine High Command. Chapter 80. The next morning. As the mist slowly dissipated, the calm, grey-blue Marine Training Camp complex gradually revealed its majestic outline. A flag fluttered in the wind at the center of the training camp, its distinct emblem appearing even more solemn and sacred under the morning light. Far from the hustle and bustle of the world, the Marine Training Camp seemed exceptionally tranquil. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows into the solemn classroom, beams of light seeming to scrutinize every corner. Historical battle scenes hung on the walls, the dignified sense of history evident in the classroom. Why do I have to come here to audit, too? Jinan complained softly, looking at Kuzan sitting next to him. He was ordered by Kong to join Zephyr's second-term training camp. A direct order, the kind that couldn't be refused. For many Marines, entering the Marine training camp was an opportunity to rise quickly. After all, the instructors here were at least headquarters vice admirals. If appreciated by certain individuals, they could be directly recruited into that person's fleet and receive priority training. But to be honest, Jinan wasn't very interested in classes, especially since the instructor hadn't even arrived yet, leaving him in a completely idle state. He had already mastered most of what could be gained from the training camp. Kuzan nudged Jinan's arm. Today is the first time Instructor Zephyr will officially meet us. Aren't you curious about what kind of person he is? Zephyr, a man who had defeated countless pirates in his lifetime, using his black arm to fight across the entire sea, yet never killing a single enemy, known as the non-killing admiral. Old man Zephyr is actually pretty good. Jinan said, touching his conscience. I've seen Admiral Zephyr a few times in the cafeteria. He's always been nice to the Marines eating with him. Toki Amatsuki also shared her opinion. She was also included in the training camp due to her talent, which was a novel experience for her. From what I've heard, Admiral Zephyr is very strict when teaching, Kuzan said, sharing the information he had gathered. Seeing Kuzan and Toki Amatsuki discussing enthusiastically, Jinan sat bored on the side. Although these two hadn't known each other for long, they got along surprisingly well. But for them, they weren't familiar with the colleagues they would be taking classes with, and could only slowly establish connections. As long as they stayed in the Marines, everyone would gradually become familiar. The people who could sit here were all elites among elites, easily reaching the rank of general. Therefore, the training camp was also a place to build relationships. The bonds established here could last for a very, very long time. However, everyone here had a sense of pride. They were all top-notch in their original places, and it wasn't easy to leave a mark on their hearts. The reality was just as Jinan thought. In the classroom, evenly spaced desks and chairs were neatly arranged in rows, while the students formed a small social circle in this orderly space. Dressed in neat military uniforms, the stars on their shoulder boards indicated their ranks, their faces full of youth and vigor. They sat together in groups of 3 or 5, forming small circles, discussing what they considered interesting or important. At this point, their familiarity with each other remained superficial, their understanding of others limited to the occasional exchange of glances in the classroom and a few words they overheard unintentionally. After all, to understand and truly impress someone, it required not only the accumulation of time, but also the tacit understanding and trust formed during shared training and challenges. And now, all of this was just beginning. The previous class is about to graduate. Zephyr will put more energy into our class. Be prepared, Jinan said, looking at the sunlight outside the window. With Kizaru and Akainu as examples, the pressure on their class should be greater. Toki Amatsuki sat at a desk in the back row of the classroom, her arm resting on the back of the adjacent chair, her blinking eyes reflecting the afterglow of the setting sun outside the window. Her gaze lightly swept across the faces of her companions, lingering on each person who started a discussion. This kind of life will be more interesting, won't it? Toki Amatsuki smiled gently, her smile light and bright, adding a different kind of atmosphere to the discussion. She looked directly at Jinan beside her and said softly, I remember a saying you once said, a strict teacher produces excellent students. Jinan leaned back in his chair, looking out the window, he smiled, his voice with a hint of pleasure, that's right, so we have to perform well and let the next class of students feel what pain is. Kyuzan nodded slightly, the expression on his face like a passing cloud shadow, complex and with a hint of understanding. Familiar recipe, familiar taste, this guy Jinan is still full of bad ideas. His voice was low and magnetic, revealing a subtle gloating, with you as an example, the next class of students will probably remember you for the rest of their lives. Time passed slowly. Half an hour later. The thoughts in the minds of the students sitting in the classroom were drawn by the sound coming from the corridor. They keenly captured that series of rhythmic leather shoes, the sound was exceptionally clear, and each echo rippled through the air. Suddenly, the classroom door slowly opened, and the eyes of all four sides turned to the door. The door frame became a sharp silhouette, and Zephyr's figure stepped in from the hazy light outside the door, calm and solemn. He wore a crisp uniform, the golden stripes on his shoulder boards reflecting the honor and dignity of a soldier under the classroom lights, his brow revealing an unquestionable authority. As soon as he entered, he looked around, his eyes seeming to penetrate the minds of every student through his black sunglasses. After seeing that everyone was present, his majestic face relaxed slightly. I know that everyone here has a proud heart, but this is a training camp held by me, so I advise you to put away your little thoughts. Sitting here, you must regard the people around you as comrades who can entrust their lives to. Remember, courage and wisdom are your strongest weapons, and calmness and perseverance are the keys to overcoming obstacles. He walked through the classroom aisle, his eyes meeting the soldiers one by one like a scan, and everyone who received his gaze could feel a heavy trust and expectation, making their hearts surge. Don't forget your comrades, they are your strongest support on the battlefield. Zephyr's exhortation was like a father's teaching, with deep love and serious instruction in his words. Glory and life go hand in hand, but when you must make a choice, remember that mission is more important than everything. Of course, I hope you can take care of both at the same time. With that, Zephyr turned around, his gaze sweeping across the classroom, leaving these Marines with a back view, that back view as steady as a rock. Chapter 81. The morning sky was faintly bright, and beams of soft orange sunlight shone through the gaps in the mist, scattering across a corner of the Marine training base. The silence was broken by a burst of orderly footsteps as a group of new recruits marched in neat steps toward the training ground. Zephyr stood at the very front of the formation, his gaze sweeping across every row of faces, ensuring that everyone was in character and ready to face today's mission. Each time his gaze swept across an area, the Marines couldn't help but straighten their backs even more, their hands clenched tightly behind them, and their faces became more serious. However, there were still a very few people standing lazily in the crowd, and he gave those few people a focused look. I won't force anyone who doesn't want to participate, you can just quit on your own, and I won't stop you. His voice wasn't very loud, but it clearly entered everyone's ears. Those who were already a little lazy had their eyes light up and instinctively raised their toes, but then seemed to think of something and hurriedly corrected their attitude. Zephyr understood that these people didn't come voluntarily, and it was likely due to their families that they came to participate in this training camp. But none of this was his responsibility. Since no one is leaving, then listen carefully to orders and complete the tasks diligently. Although Zephyr was known as the non-killing admiral, he was also known among the higher-ups of the Marines for his strict military discipline. He couldn't tolerate a grain of sand in his eyes and would never allow a black sheep to affect the lives of a group of people. If those few who had the idea of withdrawing still performed like today in the future, he would never be soft-hearted. Zephyr looked at the Marines in front of him and said loudly, "My name is Zephyr, and I believe most of you know my name, so I won't introduce myself any further. I am your chief instructor. From now on, your previous positions, resumes, and merits will be ignored. Here, you only have one identity, and that is students. Here, the only thing you need to do is obey. Even if I tell you to eat shit, you have to do it. Did you hear that? We heard you. All the Marines answered loudly, afraid that Zephyr would be dissatisfied. Jin and the other two also cooperated vigorously with Zephyr, and their voices were even the loudest. If they were going to do it, they would do it the best. They wanted to be the most dazzling guys in the training camp. This is the second time I've held a training camp. The duration is 3 years. Of course, if you want to graduate early, you can, as long as you reach the unanimous agreement of the Marine High Command. You can graduate as early as you want. Zephyr mentioned a method for graduating early, but it was estimated that not many people could do it. You are all already elites. Zephyr looked around, watching the slight movements on the faces of the people around him, and continued, the first lesson I will teach you is, to really go to the battlefield. Some of the Marines looked at each other. These people had experience fighting pirates, so Zephyr's first lesson felt a bit like child's play. But there were also some people who looked embarrassed. They had never really been on the battlefield and were a little resistant to it. Their purpose in coming to the Marine training camp was just to broaden their interpersonal relationships, and they never thought that they would face the difficulty of going to the battlefield on their first day. Seeing the Marines' various expressions, Zephyr wasn't surprised. He had seen this kind of scene many times. But all Marines would face this problem. Unless they transferred to a clerical position, this matter would happen sooner or later. Zephyr said faintly, I've seen 800 students with your quality, if not 1,000. Next, you must pay attention to your own safety. Don't accidentally die on the battlefield and make an old man like me collect your corpses. As soon as he finished speaking, all the Marines, including Jin and the others, were instantly dumbfounded, with a few black lines appearing on their foreheads. As expected of a teacher, he could make up stories one after another. He probably said these words to many people. Jin had heard it since he was a child and was basically immune to this kind of unnutritious talk. Without further ado, next, I will specifically arrange your tasks. Before the Marines could react, Zephyr went straight to the point. This time, the sea mission is a team mission. You can freely form teams of 3 to 5 people. The headquarters will send warships to escort you to the vicinity of the mission location. Your mission is to use your own and your partner's abilities to find the subjugation target. We will not give you any help with your mission. The only thing you can rely on is yourself and your companions, so please carefully choose the partners that are suitable for you. Zephyr imprinted everyone's faces in his mind. Although he spoke harshly, he valued these young people in front of him more than anyone else. They were the future of the Marines. But he also understood that without tempering, they would not become pillars of the nation. Zephyr continued, you must pay attention to safety. Do not relax your vigilance when acting outside. You can't trust anyone except your own companions. After you complete your mission, return to the nearest Marine base, contact us there, and we will arrange for someone to pick you up. As soon as he finished speaking, the Marines began to discuss among themselves, not caring that the instructor was still beside them. They had encountered team missions before. But asking them to find suitable teammates among people they had just met was a bit too difficult for them. This was a mission that concerned their lives and could not be decided rashly. Moreover, they didn't even know who the specific target of the mission was, which also made the mission difficulty increase by a level. The Marines were as anxious as ants on a hot pot, completely unable to sort out their thoughts. Teacher Zephyr, what are the penalties for failing the mission? We don't even know the specific situation of the people around us yet. It's too difficult for us to find teammates under these conditions. If we encounter danger, can we ask for your help? Zephyr didn't answer the Marines' questions. These things already had answers when they joined the Marines. He coldly swept his gaze across the Marines who raised the questions and said in an icy tone, you must be clear about your identity. You are Marines. When you become a Marine, you should be prepared. Even I am likely to die on the battlefield at any time. If you are not mentally prepared, quit as soon as possible. Hearing what Zephyr said, the Marines immediately fell silent. Perhaps they had been in a comfortable environment for too long and had long lost their courage to move forward. But they would not forget the goal of joining the Marines. Chapter 82. Everyone here is the future backbone of the Navy, and they cannot fail to understand Zifa's profound meaning. Moreover, the Navy headquarters would never let them die in vain. The selected mission targets must have been rigorously screened to retain opponents best suited to their strength. In that case, they may not be without a chance to fight. Some Navy soldiers were lost in thought, even imagining the glorious scene when their group would be the first to complete the mission. Zifa didn't want the future of the Navy to be just muscle-bound men who used brute force. On this sea, there are countless vicious people. Those who don't use their brains cannot survive on this sea. Moreover, they represent not only themselves but also the interests of the Navy. Cultivating a group of naval officers with good qualifications requires a massive investment of manpower and resources. Letting these people die in vain is a luxury the Navy cannot afford. Those who can come to the headquarters to study are not fools, but due to their age, many people have shallow experience and are completely unaware of how dangerous this sea is. They think that with a passion, they can bring peace and stability to the people in their jurisdiction. The upcoming mission will completely shatter these people's naive ideas and make them truly down to earth. Although they may encounter danger, danger cannot be a reason for them to retreat. They are the Navy. While possessing rights and status beyond ordinary people, they must also pay the corresponding price. Although Zifa loves every one of his students, he doesn't want to see his students die before him. If he wants these students to grow up smoothly, he can only let go at the right time. Some birds build their nests on cliffs and force their fledglings to fly off the cliffs after they grow their feathers. Without experiencing hardship, they will never become talented. The Navy soldiers stood quietly in the field, but their eyes searched every new face, trying to find potential partners in the crowd. They all know that choosing a teammate is a science. It not only concerns the efficiency of completing the mission but also whether you can trust the people around you in times of crisis. Their hearts were turbulent, and this anxiety was inadvertently revealed in their tense shoulders and clenched fists. Zifa's words to let them withdraw still echoed in their ears. But how could anyone standing in this place choose to run away with their tail between their legs? Returning to the place where they studied before would only subject them to ridicule. They would never give up. Looking at the crowd that had calmed down again, Zifa understood their choice. His eyes revealed approval, and a rare smile appeared on his serious face. Very good. Next, you can move freely and find your companions. Gather at the port in half an hour to receive the specific mission details. I hope you can all find teammates who suit you. Zifa said in a deep voice, dismissed now. 10 minutes later, Jinan and his two companions arrived at the port. They walked into the hut where the missions were being distributed. Once a decision is made, it cannot be changed. The three of you, as a group, must hunt down this pirate within the limited time. The voice of the instructor in charge of distributing the missions echoed in their ears. I can only provide simple hints here. In the silent air, he handed over a yellowed piece of paper with a drawing of a pirate with a full beard and fierce eyes. He looked down on everything, seeming to mock all laws and order, and taking nothing seriously. Jinan and the others looked at each other, their eyes filled with an unspeakable excitement and anticipation. For them, knowing some simple information was enough. The warship would take them to the island where that person lived, and once observation haki was activated, everything on the island would be under their control. Moreover, danger and opportunity coexist. The stronger the enemy, the more they will gain. Jinan clenched his fists, his mind already calculating various capture strategies. Tian Yushi pursed her dry lips and whispered, "Isn't this mission a little too easy?" The instructor smiled slightly, capturing Tian Yushi's contempt for the mission. This mission was indeed not challenging for the three people in front of him, but unfortunately, it was already the most difficult of all the missions. Pirates won't hide in one place for too long. You have to analyze the situation there yourself. With your ability to investigate and analyze, finding the mission target is not difficult. At this moment, Kuzan's thoughts had flown to the vast sea, as if every wave might hide a clue, and every sea area, every rumor, might be a gateway to the pirate. The mission's arrival meant that the hunting horn had been sounded. Jinan put away the paper, took a deep breath, nodded, his attitude resolute and serious. Understood, instructor, we will not fail our mission. In an instant, Jinan's heart was full of fighting spirit, and he and his partners were about to embark on an unknown journey. Night fell. The warship sailed on the boundless sea. It should have been a time for rest, but the cabin was still brightly lit. A warship probably carried 5-6 teams. Although their destinations were different, they were still on the same ship. Under the light, various sea charts and materials were scattered on the rough wooden table, and seriousness and focus were written on every face. An unspeakable silence filled the air, and only the sound of pages turning could be heard occasionally, or someone clicking their tongue lightly from time to time, seemingly silently reciting some strategy in their heart. I knew that old man Zifa wouldn't make it easy for us, Jinan complained, looking at the mission that had been switched in his hand. There's no way around it. Your strength is no secret to Teacher Zifa. It's normal to change the mission, Quzhan said with a smile. This person doesn't seem easy to deal with. Tian Yushi stood behind Jinan, looking at the paper in his hand, her eyebrows slightly furrowed. What Jinan held in his hand was a wanted poster. Or Lumbus. Bounty, 78 million berries. Admiral of the Yanta Maria Grand Fleet, known as the Slaughtering Dominator and the Cunning Adventurous Murderer. He has more than 2,000 subordinates and more than 20 pirate ships. He is not very old, but he has already made a great name for himself on the Grand Line. Although his strength is not very strong, this person is a mass murderer. The bounty completely reflects the extent to which this person's actions have reached the point of being condemned by both humans and gods. If the opponent is this kind of guy, there's no need to hold back at all. Quzhan had naturally heard of this person's notoriety. There's no need to be soft-hearted with this kind of person. It's better to send him to be reincarnated sooner rather than later. The problem is that this guy is not easy to find. News travels slowly on the sea. Even if they go to the place where this guy stayed before, they probably won't meet these people. This is Zifa and the others' test for us. Chapter 83. On the turbulent sea, a warship cut through the vast ocean like a solitary beast. Jin and Tengetsu stood quietly on the deck, gazing at the horizon where the sea met the sky, facing their unknown fate. The wind gently blew, stirring their hair. Jin looked at the receding island, understanding that each team carried a different mission, and theirs was destined to be a solitary journey. Everything around them reminded them that, compared to the other teams that had already landed, their mission was more unpredictable and isolated. They have all reached their destinations, Tengetsu sighed, her voice filled with an almost imperceptible loneliness. Jin turned his head, gazing at Tengetsu, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. Our path has always been one we must walk ourselves. Quzhan stood at The side, leaning against the railing. The warship will take us to Water 7, a place that gathers the best shipwrights in the world, and also a favorite destination for pirates. But as far as I know, our target hasn't been there. Water 7's experienced shipwrights were enough to attract pirates in droves. Drifting on the sea, everyone wants their ship to be sturdy, as it is also a matter of life and death. People from all over the world gather there, making it much easier to gather information. Jin gently patted his shoulder. They both knew the uncertainty of this mission. Every decision, every action, could determine the success of the mission and whether they could return safely. Because we don't have accurate information, that's why we need to go there. Headquarters' decision won't be wrong. Jin's gaze finally fell on the winding route. Even if the future was full of variables, they would persevere to the end. Time passed bit by bit, and after sailing on the sea for a while, Jin and the others finally saw the silhouette of Water 7. In the deep blue sea, a colorful island shadow gradually appeared in their field of vision. The warship sailed slowly. The marines stood on the deck, their eyes revealing joy at the upcoming landing. Water 7 stood there, like a peculiar island that only existed in ancient nautical charts, looking exceptionally magnificent. The high water column in the center of the island supported a cloud of mist, looking from a distance like a bridge between the sky and the earth. There were also many ports near the entrance, which were now filled with ships in need of supplies. This is Water 7, Jin murmured softly, his eyes reflecting the outline of the island. Tengetsu beside him and the others couldn't help but lean forward. Their eyes could not hide the shock in their hearts. 7 huge waterways extended from the interior of the island, like 7 giant dragons, quietly guarding the peace and tranquility of this water capital. On the waterways, ships came and went, like wings woven in the sea, light and vivid. What a magical way to travel! Jin and his teammates smiled at each other, understanding how different this moment was from their usual warships speeding through the waves. The ships here were leisurely and content. Travel was no longer a pursuit, but an enjoyment. They couldn't help but imagine themselves traveling through the waterways, feeling the comfort and unique charm of the water city. Our mission is about to begin. I hope we can be as successful as these ships, Quzhan said after a long silence, his voice carrying an imperceptible expectation. All right, let's get off the ship. Jin leaped down, landing lightly on the port. Water 7 was famous throughout the sea, so there were many ships traveling here, and occasionally you could see pirate ships leaving the port. It can be said that it is a mixed bag here, and it is the best choice for them to disembark here. It was a pity that the sea train had not yet started construction, and he really wanted to try riding it. Jin did not choose to enter the island from the huge waterways in front of him, but took the two of them to fly in another direction. On the scrap island, 3 shadows moved forward. Jin and Tenjitsu's footsteps sounded particularly loud in the shipyard covered with sand and stones. Judging from the appearance of this place, it seems to be a place where abandoned ships are placed, but the further you go inside, the more you find that there is a different world inside. Moreover, this place is different from what Jin imagined. The scrap island at this time is also unusually lively, with a constant flow of people. However, most people left an inconspicuous building with disappointed expressions. This is Water 7's largest shipyard. Tom's workers. Tom was assigned to this garbage dump by the rulers of Water 7 because he built the Oro Jackson for Roger, but even so, people came to Tom in an endless stream. This is also Jin's main investigation site for this trip. This place is unexpectedly good, Jin said with emotion as he walked. The old shipwrights chatter in the corner, the sound of planing wood cutting through the air, and the rhythm of iron hammers beating not far away, made this place full of life. After Jin and the others approached the shipyard, a yellow-haired woman walked up to them, looking at them warily. "Who are you? If you want to build a ship, please make an appointment in advance." Kokoro had been in contact with all kinds of people, and although the 3 people in front of her were wearing casual clothes, their temperament was different from ordinary people. "We are not here to commission the building of a ship, we just want to see Mr. Tom," Jin said, looking at the woman in front of him. "He's not here," Kokoro said flatly when she heard that these people were looking for Tom. She was Tom's assistant, and it was also her job to block unknown people from Tom. Jin knew the other party's concerns and said with a smile, "We are not here to cause trouble, we just have one thing we want to ask Mr. Tom for help with." Bad people will not directly say that they are going to do bad things. Kokoro was still wary of Jin and the others. Just as Jin was about to continue explaining, a tall figure appeared behind Kokoro. "What's the matter with you 3 coming here?" Jin's eyes lit up when he saw the man who suddenly appeared. The man was obese, wearing a dark blue on his upper body, and always had a smile on his face, giving people a feeling that he was easy to get along with. "Tom, why did you come out?" Kokoro was a little anxious, she didn't expect Tom to appear here. "I am the resounding man Tom, you can say what you want. But I still have things to complete, if possible, please be brief." Tom wiped the dusty hand on his clothes, stretched out his hand and shook hands with Jin politely. Chapter 84. "You guys are from the Marine headquarters." Tom sighed. He had a good impression of the Marines, but his current identity was a bit sensitive. After building a ship for Roger, he had been disliked by both the Marines and the people of Water 7. But he was just an ordinary person who could build ships, with no ideals or ambitions, only wanting to make ships that could make the people on board feel safe. "We strictly keep our clients' information confidential. You might be disappointed if you come to me," Tom said truthfully. "But they are evil pirates," Toki said sincerely. "No need to say more. We shipbuilders also have to abide by the rules of this industry, but I can tell you that the person you are looking for did commission me to build a ship." Tom thought for a moment and gave some hints. Jinin's eyes flashed. Having a clue was a good thing. "Thank you for telling us this information." Tom shook his head, not accepting Jinin's thanks, and said truthfully, that pirate crew came to Water 7 many times. "You can ask anyone and they can give you the answer. If there is no urgent matter, you should leave this island as soon as possible," Tom kindly reminded, seeing that the 3 people opposite him seemed to be visiting Water 7 for the first time. "We want to continue searching the island for clues about that person." Toki was a little puzzled. They had only arrived on this island today, and it was a bit unrealistic to leave so quickly. Kuzan was also a little strange and asked, "Do you have any other concerns?" Tom did not answer directly, but asked an unexpected question, "Did you see many ships leaving when you came?" Jinan recalled the scene when he came here and nodded, "That's right, there were many ships leaving here when we came. Could it be that there is some turmoil on the island?" Toki's eyes became dangerous. If that was the case, they couldn't leave even more. They would at least quell the chaos on the island before leaving. Tom saw that the 3 people in front of him had misunderstood and shook his head with a smile. "Have you heard of the water gods of Water 7? "Water gods?" Jinan seemed to have grasped something, but couldn't remember it for a moment. "Looking at your expressions, you really haven't heard of it," Tom suddenly realized. "The water gods are the annual tsunami. Every time this time comes, outsiders will choose to leave Water 7, and local residents will run to high places to avoid the tsunami. The time you came is just when the water gods are coming. Tom patiently explained to the three of them, he didn't want these people to be stupidly swept into the sea by the tsunami. Tom led the three of them outside the room. Tom stood in front of Jinan and the others, his toes digging into the fine sand unconsciously. The sea breeze ruffled his hair, his brows furrowed slightly, and his eyes were filled with a kind of inexplicable heaviness. He turned around and pointed to the subtle changes in the distant horizon, where the ripples seemed to reveal the impending anger of nature. Look at the way the waves look. Tom's speed was slow and clear. That's not an ordinary wave, it's the prelude to a tsunami. Jinan and the others fell silent, and the air seemed to freeze. Their expressions changed slightly when they heard the word tsunami, but no one spoke, and their heartbeats seemed to become tense in the face of this impending disaster. Their gazes were attracted by his gestures and looked towards the coast, where the water level seemed to have dropped a little, revealing the traces of the cliffs that had been soaked in seawater for many years. When you see the seawater recede rapidly, it's like the sea is taking a deep breath, then in the next second, it will come back with incredible power and speed. Tom's words were accompanied by his gestures, and the trembling of his palms was not because of fear, but because of the urgency to convey. Toki's throat slid, swallowing nervously. Did this kind of natural disaster really exist in this world? But why did the people here seem to have adapted to this situation? They exchanged a silent glance with each other, and they knew that everything Tom said was true. Tom continued to explain, every detail was like drawing a map of escape for them. He wanted to make the three of them realize that every second of hesitation meant that the chance to leave here was getting smaller, and the impact of the tsunami would not subside in a short time. The sea's devastation can destroy everything, but hasn't Water 7 always stood here? Jinan's voice was calm, and he really wanted to see this grand tsunami with his own eyes. Tom's nervousness did not infect them. On the contrary, the blood in their hearts seemed to become more boiling after hearing this. They looked up at the surging horizon in the distance, where the waves were still calmly lapping against the shore, as if the world was still frozen at this moment. Ha ha ha, I am also very interested in this water god. Kuzan took a light step forward, his words full of excitement. He clenched his fists. One day he would make the sea unable to stop his steps, even a monstrous wave could be easily frozen. The three of them may have had different ideas in their hearts, but they reached a tacit understanding on the decision not to leave Water 7. In a day or two, the water gods will come surging from afar. Tom's steady voice spread slowly in the silent air. He was used to tsunamis. He could take it calmly as it was something that happened once every year. However, he was very interested in these three Marines from the Marine headquarters. He hadn't seen this kind of energetic Marine for a long time. The tsunami is coming, and I see that you still have no intention of leaving. Jinan looked at the shipyard that was still busy. People were still focused on their work, not panicked by the arrival of the tsunami at all. These ordinary people were not afraid, so naturally they had nothing to fear. Uncle Tom, we will follow you from now on. Tom looked at them, first with doubt, then with appreciation. I am a person who is rejected by Water 7. There is still some time before the tsunami arrives. Let's go up one last time. Tom looked at the main city in the distance and sighed. On the rocks by the sea, the three stood side by side, facing the surging sea. They all believed that even the most violent waves would eventually return to calm. The sea breeze at this dusk seemed more rapid than usual, with urgency and moisture, as if the ocean's own breathing had become heavy. The clouds in the sky gathered, colored into a deep grey, gradually merging with the horizon, making it difficult to distinguish where the sky was and where the sea was. Jinan stared at the gathering cloud sea, but his heart seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand. In the face of nature, no matter how strong he was, he would sigh at his own insignificance. Without words, they knew that this calm was just the calm before the storm, a premonition, a prelude to the precipitation of natural forces. Chapter 85. The sky gradually lost its original brilliant colors, turning dull grey. The waves on the shore erupted with their immense power, making the entire sea area even more turbulent. The sea breeze blew unrestrained, whipping up sand, leaving only the oppressive twilight and the increasingly desolate sea horizon. The once bustling port was now deserted, and all peaceful routines were about to be disrupted. On the eve of the tsunami, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Birds no longer schemed the low sky, and even the usually playful seagulls sensed the ominous atmosphere and hurried back to their nests. The evening breeze carried a faint, watery vapor and an imperceptible strange smell, nature's most authentic warning. Jinan stood on the corridor, his hand on the railing, his gaze piercing through the swaying lights, staring at the constantly churning waves. He tightened his coat, resisting the chill of the night. The tense atmosphere in Water 7 was like a hemp rope on the beach, gradually tightening after being soaked by the tide. The air was filled with an anticipated sense of oppression, making it difficult for everyone to breathe. They knew they were at the forefront of this severe weather, and the humid, salty air told them that a tsunami was coming. The waves on the sea began to rhythmically beat against the reef, like a vast orchestra playing the overture of fate. Through the blurred night, Jinan and the others could feel every vibration on the water's surface, every wave seemed to be telling them the alarm of the rapids. At this moment, the entire natural world was preparing for the spectacular scene that was about to unfold. The sea breeze, the waves, and the dark sky all became the silent melody before the impending tsunami. The annual tsunami. Jinan leaned against the door frame, sighing at the magnificent spectacle. Tom stood beside him with his arms crossed, sighed, and said, "Our economic situation here is not very good to begin with, and the annual tsunami only makes the lives of the people here worse." He recalled those helpless eyes and trembling figures, and whenever he spoke of the misery, the corners of his mouth would twitch involuntarily. Fishermen lost their boats, merchants lost their shops. On this island, the tourism industry is developing very slowly, and at this time of year, there are no tourists coming here at all. Jinan listened quietly, his expression shifting from following the old man's emotions to gradually becoming grave. The light in his eyes was precisely the recognition of the old man's experience and the persistence for the future. He knew that the tsunami brought not only economic losses, but also the collapse of the entire island's ecology and economic pillars, and many people would lose their livelihoods because of the tsunami and starve to death on the streets. "But we will not be crushed by these things," Tom said, his tone firm and powerful. Standing up, he was a pillar that stood tall, his eyes firm and unwavering. He gently patted Jinan's shoulder. "I believe that through our joint efforts, we will not only revitalize this island, but also develop it even better." Jinan pondered slightly, knowing that the other party had already begun to study the sea train. For Tom, the world's #1 shipwright, shipbuilding alone could no longer satisfy his creative desires. He wanted to create something to change this island. Tom looked at the sky, turned to Jinan and the others, and said, "It's about time, you guys follow me to the top of Water 7 to avoid the tsunami. We have a special place to rest up there, where no one will bother us." In the shipbuilding plaza, the people from Tom's workshop were already prepared, carrying only basic living supplies. They were very familiar with the evacuation process, and they knew why they were moving to the top of the island so late, but they had no complaints. They knew exactly what kind of person Mr. Tom was. "Then let's get moving." Tom led the group towards an inconspicuous path, which wound its way to their shelter. Jinan and the others followed. The road was rugged with rocks and overgrown with weeds. It looked like it hadn't been taken care of for a long time. After winding around for half an hour, they arrived at the top floor of the island. At the highest peak of the island, the air seemed to congeal into sluggish waves. Standing here, Jinan saw the clouds in the sky converging into a dark cyan territory in the vast field of vision, hovering low and rampant above the sea. That was the calm before the tsunami, an uneasy silence, foretelling the coming storm. He could feel an invisible sense of oppression on his body, as if the entire island was trembling in fear. Jinan closed his eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and let his breathing echo the surging momentum between heaven and earth, seeking a sense of transcendence in that rampant atmosphere. Opening his eyes, his pupils reflected the constantly accumulating crests on the distant sea horizon. Lightning snaked through the dark clouds, accompanied by rolling thunder, foreshadowing the unstoppable power of nature. The aura of the tsunami was becoming more and more obvious, and the trees on the island seemed to feel the threat, swaying wildly in the wind, issuing rustling warnings. Boom! The tsunami surged like a giant beast, the raging waves hundreds of meters high, carrying the power to devour everything, ruthlessly crashing directly on the buildings around the periphery of the island. At that moment, the sky and the earth seemed to lose their color, leaving only the surging white of the waves and the darkness under the night. The buildings seemed so fragile in the face of this unpredictable force of nature. Houses were swept away by the giant as if they were nothing, and the wooden structures peeled off like paper under the impact of the sea water, and then disappeared into the raging waves. Even those concrete buildings with seemingly solid structures kept making heart-breaking creaking sounds under such a huge impact, as if they would collapse in the next moment. The sound of windows shattering, the sound of metal twisting, the sound of wood breaking, all of this was mixed with the roar of the giant waves. The streets became rivers, and out-of-control ships drifted everywhere, drifting blindly in the dark night. Not good. A cry of alarm came from the crowd. This tsunami was bigger than ever before. The people of Water 7 had already come to the highest point of the island, but they saw that the tsunami was about to reach this platform. The people hiding here were panicked, they could already feel the cold and humid breath of the tsunami. Higher screams erupted from the crowd, and they clung tightly to anything they could hold on to, but deep down they knew that such efforts might not be of much help. The howling wind and the roar of the giant waves almost drowned out every breath, but the rhythm of people's heartbeats became more rapid. However, clang! A ray of cold light flickered in the dim sky and earth, and a cyan light streaked across the air. The majestic tsunami was divided into two. It should be known that this was a giant wave hundreds of meters high. Seeing that the tsunami that could easily bury tens of thousands of lives was easily resolved, everyone present stared with eyes as big as copper bells, looking in disbelief at the scene in front of them. Behind the plaza, tens of thousands of people also opened their mouths wide, so surprised that they couldn't even make a sound. Watching the huge knife mark that divided the sea in half slowly dissipate. Chapter 86. You really are full of surprises. Tom looked at Jinan, whose height didn't even reach his shoulder, and marveled. The studio members around him were also very curious about Jinan's actions just now. It was unbelievable that someone with such strength would stay by their side. Just a small thing, a small thing. Jinan waved his hand, modestly. It seemed like any swordsman could do something like destroying a tsunami. He wasn't sure he could do it before, but he didn't expect it to be so easy. Zoro's flying slash could easily take down the mountain-sized pika, and now it seemed that his slash could handle a tsunami without any problem. In the eyes of the people in the studio, Jinan was being too modest. Doing something like that was beyond their imagination. At the same time, an investigator from the Marine headquarters hidden among the civilians reported everything about Water 7 to the headquarters. Zephyr at the Marine headquarters put down the den mushi, his expression complicated. He didn't expect that the kid would give him such a big surprise after only being on a mission for a short time. There are actually such interesting juniors in this year's recruits. Our Navy is really full of talent. Sitting on the sofa in Zephyr's office was a man with a red flower on his chest and a cigar between his fingers. He became very interested in the person reported on the den mushi. I had a brief encounter with Jinan before. That guy is pretty good. Borsellino also sat down on the other sofa, still with that nonchalant look. Borsellino seemed to not care about anything, but those who knew him knew that this guy was extremely strong and had a certain influence within the Navy. You guys should take care of your own business first. Zephyr said, looking at the two excellent students in front of him. These two guys' personalities were no better than Jinan's. Now that they had completed their graduation procedures and officially served as Marine headquarters rear admirals, no one could guess what would happen to the Navy in the future. The difficulty of this year's training camp has been greatly increased compared to our time. They're letting those recruits wipe out pirates right away. Borsellino clipped his nails, the corners of his mouth curving slightly, and no one could guess what he was thinking. Sakazuki took a puff of his cigar. It's impossible for the headquarters to let them go to their deaths. They're all being followed. Otherwise, it would be lucky if half of them could return safely. Pirates don't talk about fair fights with the Navy. When their lives are threatened, they will use any means necessary. Those newbies may not be able to withstand those insidious tricks. Of the Marines who entered the training camp at the same time as Sakazuki and the others, less than half of them are still fighting on the front lines. The Navy is not such a comfortable profession. It is always possible to be accompanied by death. It's normal to have some protection for the newcomers. Borsellino said lightly, if there's no fresh blood, Teacher Zephyr will have a headache. That's right, it's because the training camp is for selecting the best of the best that such a task was arranged at the beginning. Zephyr's graduation requirements for students are very simple. They just need to be able to complete missions safely when leading teams in the future. If they don't have that ability, they should choose to quit at the beginning and do clerical work. That way, at least their lives won't be threatened. At the same time as the tsunami occurred. In the first half of the Grand Line, on a nameless island. The night was dark. Accompanied by the dim moonlight, the interior of the desolate island was occupied by a frightening red light. The flames of the bonfire danced, and the light reflected was not a warm gathering, but a scene of hell on earth. The pirates took wooden firewood from the bonfire and set fire to the houses on the island one by one. The flames quickly surged around, and the houses made crackling noises as they burned. Before long, all the surrounding buildings were reduced to charcoal. The island was covered with the corpses of civilians, and blood stained the land dark red. TCH. A pirate spat on a corpse, they're all poor bastards. Such a big island doesn't even have 1 million berries. What a jinx. He looked at the pirate next to him and asked, is everything on this island here? Admiral Oronbus, these guys are too poor. Everything is here. The pirates were also very dissatisfied. They plundered this place with more than 20 ships, but only got this little bit. The input and output were completely disproportionate. Screams pierced the silent night sky, and people on the island were still being tortured by the pirates. Vindictive curses were endless, but more were echoes of pain and despair. We can't let these damned lowly people get away with it. Kill all the men to save food, and the women can be taken away and sold to slave owners to earn some money. Oronbus gave orders to his subordinates. He wanted to squeeze out all the value of these people. He could enjoy the beautiful women first and then sell them, although the price would be lower, but it wouldn't be a loss. Afterwards, the pirates' laughter rippled in the air, mixed with teasing words, forming a sharp contrast with the wailing and cursing. These laughter not only lacked sympathy and pity, but also contained more cruelty and ridicule. Their faces, illuminated by the fire, were distorted by evil joy. Suddenly, a pirate ran over from the pirate ship with a smile on his face. Admiral, good news, the brothers who stayed on the island outside Water 7 sent a message saying that they observed that it has been hit by a tsunami. Oronbus grinned. He had been waiting for this moment for some time. It had been more than a year since the last time he increased the number of ships. The current ships could no longer afford more crew members. He urgently needed to replenish the pirate group's ships. After the tsunami, Water 7's defenses are at their lowest every year, and those annoying marines will not be stationed there. Although he was not afraid of the navy, if it interfered with the progress of the pirate ship's construction, it would take him more time to go to sea next time, and he didn't want to be so troublesome. The eating and drinking of a ship of people is a huge expense, not to mention that he has more than 20 ships of people to support. Men, keep partying and keep dancing. Oronbus shouted, if you're not satisfied on this island, we'll continue to find the next island. We pirates have the final say in this sea. Someone always has to harvest the fattened pigs. Follow me, and I guarantee you'll eat and drink well. After a moment of silence, the pirates burst into violent cheers, and the swords in their hands collided together, making a sound that soared into the sky. Long live the Admiral! Let's go to the next island and fuck it up again. For freedom! The cheers on the island grew more and more enthusiastic. The soaring firelight set off the pirates like demons crawling out of hell. Chapter 87. On the streets of Water 7 after the tsunami, the once incredibly sturdy ship hulls were scattered across the island as wreckage. Broken bridges and scattered tools, seemingly drifting from nowhere, lay strewn about, painting a picture of utter chaos. Jinan and his group advanced through the streets, their appearance completely changed by the tsunami. Many residents stood by the roadside, their eyes filled with joy as they scrutinized their homes, assessing the extent of their losses. Due to the frequent tsunamis, the houses here were built extremely sturdily, and because the tsunami was neutralized midway. Therefore, the locals found that their losses this time were infinitely smaller compared to previous years, and the resources brought by the tsunami were even more abundant than in previous years. Tsunamis not only bring disaster and destruction but also carry some materials that are usually difficult to obtain, such as the salt used by the people of Water 7. Happily stepping over the damp ground, the sound of people's footsteps became increasingly light, enjoying the tranquility after the tsunami. The waves crashing against the shore slowly receded but could not wash away the mud and chaos on the ground. Those planks eroded by the red tide, once the hard shell of the ship's hull, were now broken and lying quietly on the beach, telling the story of what had happened here. It would still take some effort for people to restore their lives to what they were before the tsunami. Jinan and the others returned to the location of Tom's workers, only to see a scene of utter devastation. The wreckage of broken ship hulls was intertwined, the once busy production line was now a scene of devastation, and mud was piled up everywhere. When they first arrived here, the laughter and shouts of the workers intertwined, although it was a bit messy, it was full of life. Now, only the gradually drying mud and the sound of the sea breeze hitting the metal wreckage remained. Ha 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 ha, it's back to this again. Tom was used to the scene, scratching his head and laughing loudly at the sky. The others and the workers also shrugged with a smile, obviously accustomed to the scene. This time, thanks to your help, otherwise, we would have to wait a while before we could go home, Tom said happily, putting his arm around Jin'an's shoulder. Jinan pointed at himself and continued, I am a marine, naturally, I need to take action when I see someone in danger. However, you still need to find a way to overcome the difficulties, situations like this will likely continue in the future. Jinan didn't want his presence to slow down Tom's plan to build the sea train. Hearing Jin'an's words, not only Tom but everyone else present laughed. Tom patted his chest and said, I already have a way to solve the impact of the tsunami, Water 7 will definitely become better in the future. He was not affected by what happened today at all, he would realize his dream himself. Just as the sound of their conversation had not completely faded, Kuzan hurried over with a den mushi. His appearance was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, breaking the previous tranquility. Message. Navy. Kuzan gasped urgently, words squeezed out of his throat in fits and starts. Jinan had asked him to ask his friends in the Navy to pay attention to the situation in the waters around Water 7, today, he finally received a message from there, but unfortunately. Jin'an's brow furrowed, he smelled an ominous aura from Kuzan's intermittent words, and a bad feeling quietly rose in his chest. He took a few steps closer to Kuzan, lowered his voice, and asked, What's the situation? Kuzan raised his head, his eyes full of sadness, although he knew that what happened was the norm in this world, he still couldn't accept such things happening. A town not far from here, was massacred by pirates. The sudden news was like a heavy hammer hitting everyone's hearts. The air seemed to freeze instantly, followed by silence and a depressing atmosphere. Jin'an's face turned ashen in an instant, and complex emotions welled up in his heart, anger, sorrow, and sympathy for the innocent victims. He clenched his fists tightly, his fingernails digging into his palms, although his body did not move, his heart was surging like a turbulent sea. Tom also sensed the tense atmosphere at this moment, a worried frown appeared on his face, and he muttered, Alas, this world. Jinan suddenly raised his head, his eyes flashing with a decisive light, Pack your things and prepare to set off. Roger. Kuzan responded and hurried to find Toki. In the sky, Jinan looked down at the sea, his eyes quickly scanning his surroundings. Affected by the tsunami, there are far fewer ships nearby. Only some driftwood floated on the sea, and no ships were found. Not far ahead was Nice Lobby, one of the three major organizations under the world government. A distinct government ship sailed through the waves, the world government's emblem flashing dazzlingly in the morning light. The ship's hull was steady and majestic, just like the power and order it represented, beyond doubt and beyond challenge. Light and shadow intertwined to depict the disciplined soldiers on the ship. At the bow of the ship, a tall and straight figure stood, he was Spondam, the chief of the Special Department CP9. His face was cold and stern, wearing a well-fitting black suit, his slightly curly long hair gently blown by the wind, and his whole person exuded an aura of undeniable majesty, his black and blue coat fluttered gently in the wind, and a pair of eyes as sharp as an eagle stared at the sea ahead. The expression on Spondam's face was almost indifferent, making it difficult to see what he was thinking from his expressionless appearance. He was as still as water, but his heart was like an underwater vortex, hiding unfathomable plans and intentions. Jinan and the others hovered above the clouds, quietly watching Spondam's every move. Kanbunshoku Haki allowed them to easily observe everything within a certain range. With Spondam's strength, he couldn't detect their existence at all. Where are the pirates who are supposed to meet us? Spondam asked, staring ahead. The CP9 member holding the Den Mushi replied, according to the message from the other side, they are still 3 days away from Water 7. Those wastes haven't kept their promise with us again. Spondam said unhappily, pirates are indeed a bunch of untrustworthy trash. They said it was because they haven't collected all the goods we asked for, so there was some delay in the time, the CP9 member repeated the words from the pirates. It's all excuses, if I'm not mistaken, those guys will ask us for a hefty price then, Spondam said indifferently. They needed a batch of qualified slaves, if they started training them from a young age, they could make those slaves completely obey him, the chief. Factions within CP were rampant, and the people around him were all the old guard left by the previous chief. He was not comfortable entrusting important matters to these people. In the sky. We don't need to follow that disgusting guy below, do we? Toki had no good feelings for people who trafficked in people, seeing this kind of person made her sick. Why don't we go and kill him? Toki suggested, this kind of person is a scourge to the world. It's not the time yet, Jinan said, squinting at the man below. Chapter 88. One day later. In the sky, 3 figures seemed to blend with the clouds, floating silently with the wind, quietly following the official ship in the churning waves below against the backdrop of the azure sky. Are all the people in CP like this? Tian Yushi asked. After following this group of people for a day, she clearly understood what kind of stuff they were made of. In short, these people do everything except good deeds, there's nothing they haven't done. Spondum, he really is capable of anything to get promoted. Jin An's eyes narrowed slightly, he severely overestimated the lower limits of these CP department members who worked for the world government. Assassination, robbery, framing, and silencing are just the simplest tools in CP, readily used by these people, completely disregarding the lives of those they target. They truly embody the phrase "the end justifies the means." The 3 in the air maintained a consistent speed and distance from the ship below. They're going to stop at the island ahead, Kuzan said, seeing Spondum ordering the crew to dock. It seems this is where they're meeting the pirates, Tian Yushi said, looking at the island ahead. This island is quite large, aren't they afraid of being discovered if they trade in a place like this? She saw signs of life on the island, wondering what these CP9 guys were thinking. Suddenly, Tian Yushi pointed in another direction of the island and said, Jinan, look quickly. On the edge of the island, Jinan and the others stood on a high cliff, gazing into the distance. The sky turned from azure to grey, and an uneasy agitation spread across the sea. In the distance, a dark cloud approached, but it wasn't the prelude to a storm. Instead, it was dozens of pirate ships galloping fiercely and powerfully, the menacing skull flags on their sails fluttering in the sea breeze. The shadows of the pirate ship fleet gradually formed a dense black barrier on the horizon, like an unavoidable storm approaching this once peaceful harbor. Each pirate ship was larger than a navy warship, creating towering waves when moving together. Jinan stood at the forefront, his gaze as sharp as a sword, piercing through the distant haze. What pirate group is this, moving with so many ships? Every inch of his body was tense, ready to face the upcoming battle. Kuzan was also a little excited, it had been a long time since he had seen a pirate group of this scale, and he was already eager to try. At such a moment, psychological unease was an emotion that had to be discarded, so he took a deep breath, trying to calm the surging waves in his heart. Tian Yushi was in a state of extreme excitement, stroking the long sword in her hand. None of them spoke, but they were all adjusting their mindsets and gathering their fighting spirit in their own ways. Their eyes revealed a look of excitement, even when facing hundreds of times more enemies than themselves, there was no fear in their hearts. The only thing they possessed was absolute confidence in their own strength. No matter what pirate group it is, we'll kill as many as come, Kuzan licked his lips, a hint of bloodlust flashing in his eyes. In the surging waves, the pirate ships cleaved through the water. As the pirate ship fleet drew closer, the details of the pirate group began to become clear. The merciless sunlight scattered silver arrows, illuminating the high-flying flags. In an instant, Jin An's brow jumped, and his heart was filled with joy. Those weren't ordinary pirate flags. Our luck isn't bad. The pirate ships in front of them were the target they had been searching for all this time, the notorious Yodomaria pirates. Instantly, their hearts beat furiously, each impact echoing in his chest. It's all come without any effort. Kuzan was even more excited. He also recognized the symbol on the flag at that moment, and the muscles on his face tightened. Perhaps they would be the first team to complete the mission this time. Their enemy, the target of their trip, was right in front of them. Inside the island, the air was filled with the Icelanders' fear and timidity. Sharp warnings pierced the island's peace, and along with the roar of the waves and the sea breeze, the slowly approaching black sails crashed against the Icelanders' hearts like surging undercurrents. The men, women, and children on the island were stunned by the appearance of these uninvited guests, staring in disbelief at the sea that turned nightmares into reality. The pirates are here. Quick, find a place to hide. The women hurriedly took their children and scrambled to find hiding places, their wide eyes reflecting the approaching black silhouettes. The children sensed the adults' panic, and their cries rose and fell, their little hands tightly clutching their mother's skirts, their little faces full of confusion and fear. Sea God, please show your power and save us, your devout believers. People trembled their lips, muttering ancient prayers, their sorrowful eyes fixed on the vast sea, as if seeking the protection of the sea god. Brothers, take up your weapons and fight those pirates. The able-bodied men who shouldered the responsibility of guarding the peace were preparing tools for self-defense, exchanging bloodless glances, and although there were no words between them, their eyes revealed a common firmness. Resisting means death, and not resisting also means death, they would rather die with some backbone. Emotions spread rapidly across the island like ignited tinder. In the chaos, people began to organize quickly, and although their hearts trembled, they were willing to pay any price to survive. The Icelanders' gazes sometimes stared at the distant, cold sea, and sometimes swept across the faces of their compatriots, and although there was fear, there was more of a determination not to lose everything. A heavy atmosphere enveloped everyone's heart, the sea breeze seemed to become more fierce, and the air was full of tension and uncertainty. Suddenly, the sky, which was just clear and cloudless, was covered by suddenly surging dark clouds, instantly dyeing the azure sky into ink. Lightning flashed, jumped, and twisted in the clouds. The ensuing thunder tore through the air, and the roars, like the roar of a god, made the people on the island feel unprecedented panic. People's faces, like the sky, became grey and unclear. They stopped their hasty movements and looked up at the sky. Could it be that their prayers had worked? Had the sea god really manifested? What's the situation? Orionbus pushed open the hatch and stared at the suddenly changing weather. Is this island so evil? The weather changes faster than in the New World. Orionbus looked around. Never mind, it's just a change in the weather. Bring the goods, the others should be getting impatient. Admiral, we are ready and can set off at any time. Then let's go. Where do you think you're going? A voice came from the sails, you should just stay here. Chapter 89. Who's there? Olympus looked up, staring directly at the source of the voice. But as he made out the approaching figure, the smile on his face abruptly froze, a flicker of fear flashing in his eyes. It wasn't until the person was right in front of him that he realized he was already breaking out in a cold sweat. What terrified him even more was that even with the person standing right there, his observation hacky hadn't detected their presence. Olympus shouted loudly, "Friend, more friends mean more paths. How about we get acquainted? I have some influence in the latter half of the Grand Line." Olympus patted his chest, guaranteeing, "Once I finish this job, I'll definitely have a drink with you. You're a friend I'm making." He made a choice that other pirates would consider shameful, his tone laced with pleading and flattery, trying to talk his way out of the situation. His voice was slightly unnatural. The roar he usually used to intimidate his subordinates now sounded like an aging sea wolf, the authority in his voice completely gone. "Make friends with pirates." Jinan lightly landed on the deck, his muscles bulging, observation hacky completely enveloping the area where the pirates were. Under his gaze, the pirates on the deck seemed to have no secrets, every breath, every tremor, every glance was taken in by Jinan. "We don't seem to have provoked you, have we?" Even if they didn't know Jinan's identity, they didn't want to needlessly provoke an enemy. "You're all pirates. Do you even care if you've provoked someone?" Jinan looked at the pirate who spoke, a hint of mockery on his lips. Pirates generally only care about enjoying life and aren't interested in new events happening in the world, so naturally, they didn't know about Jinan, the rising star in the Marines. The next moment, a flash of brilliance appeared in Jinan's eyes. The restrained, surging aura instantly spread rapidly in all directions, an invisible force rushing towards the pirates. Accompanied by the sharp sound of a blade being drawn, the wild goose wing blade was already in his hand. The first thing that entered the pirate's sight was the terrifying gleam of the blade. "Looks like we can't come to an agreement. Then I'll see how you, alone, can handle our fight." In Olympus's roar, the pirates raised their swords and surrounded the lone figure in their midst. Jinan seemed isolated and helpless, but he was as calm as a deep pool. He stood firm, already anticipating this outcome. His expression didn't change, it was still so indifferent and calm. The pirates roared, the blades cutting through the air, surrounding Jinan like shadows. But what they found strange was that Jinan seemed to be able to foresee the trajectory of every blade, easily deflecting their attacks. Boom! In an instant, the attacks they launched with all their might were suddenly deflected, a fierce gale raging, stirring up a cloud of dust. The sudden change caused everyone to subconsciously raise their arms to shield their eyes. Clang! In a flash, under the control of his sixth sense, Olympus raised his whip, barely blocking Jinan's attack. "What a pity! I was originally planning to let you have an easy journey to the afterlife," Jinan smiled, drawing back. Olympus subconsciously looked for the figure who had just attacked him, a hint of fear mixed with a trace of relief in his heart. The dust dissipated. The pirates regained their sight, knowing that if they didn't quickly deal with their opponent, they would fall into an even more disadvantageous situation. Don't worry about getting hurt, kill him at all costs. If they hesitated any longer, they wouldn't be able to leave this place today. Amidst the raging storm of blades, Jin An's gaze remained calm like the undisturbed ice on a winter lake. He accurately captured the movements of every enemy, his muscles exploding at the necessary moment, executing one precise roundhouse kick and elbow strike after another. He drew his blade from bottom to top, a flash of light passing, and a team of pirates was instantly beheaded. He lowered his eyes, watching the reckless pirates in front of him, calmly continuing to swing his blade. He leisurely reaped the lives of one pirate after another. Jin An's legs compressed like springs, then he leaped up, arcing through the space like a flash of light, jumping over the enemies' heads and landing skillfully behind them. When the pirates turned around, they could only see the moment Jin An swung his blade like the Grim Reaper, and then they felt themselves flying high into the air. Olympus stared ahead, his hand no longer trembling as he gripped his sword. His eyes were bloodshot, barely regaining his fighting spirit. He shouted sternly at Jin An in the distance, "I can now forgive your actions. If you still don't give up, I'll pay any price to keep you here." The pirates heard a hint of panic in Olympus's words. Their admiral had built up such a great reputation on this sea step by step, and had never shown such an expression when fighting someone. The pirates understood their captain's intentions and acted silently, using their bodies to cover their captain's actions. Jin An dodged to the side, avoiding Olympus's embrace. He slightly flipped his hand and grabbed the other's arm before he could retract it. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Olympus's forehead, and his originally indifferent face showed a hint of disbelief. The enormous force transmitted from his arm twisted his arm into an extremely exaggerated arc. He could even hear the sound of his arm muscles tearing. Ah! The strong arm only lasted for less than a second before it was directly twisted off. He covered the wound that was gushing blood and only then cried out, only to feel his collar being grabbed and suddenly flying backward. He barely stopped after crashing through several pirate ships, blood constantly gushing from the corners of his mouth, almost going to hell. He supported himself on the ship, trying to stand up. Just as he was about to stand up, he was kicked to the ground again. In terror, he looked up with all his strength. He saw that the demon was looking down at him, those eyes devoid of human emotion, only endless coldness. Olympus grinned, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "I admit defeat. You came for me, right? I'm satisfied to die on this sea. Besides, I enjoyed it for so long, and so many people died at my hands. How delightful!" Jin An glanced at him and casually slashed his blade across the other's neck. He didn't know how to repent before he died. This kind of person completely lacks humanity. Jin An wiped the blood off his blade, kicked Olympus's body into the sea, and turned to fly towards the coast. The pirates watched the ship gradually sinking into the sea, unable to recover for a moment. They didn't even see how the other party did all this. Moreover, where did their great captain go? They heard a roar, and then their ship changed its appearance. Their ships were all made by highly skilled shipwrights using high-strength alloys. The remaining pirates swallowed. Chapter 90. Everything you asked for is here. Kuzan handed over the den mushi in his hand, looking at everything that Jin An had caused. "Thanks." Jin An put the den mushi into his pocket. The content stored in the den mushi might not be useful, but it was rare to encounter Spondum, so it was good to keep a copy of his evidence. "You didn't leave a single one alive." Kuzan looked around and found only bloodstains on the beach, not a single trace of the pirates. Jin An nodded, "A bunch of garbage, what's the point of leaving them in this world? There are still some people in the ship's cabin, we'll arrange for them later." He looked at the pirate ship not far away. The human trafficking business was really profitable. Most pirate groups would catch a group of people and lock them in the cabin. Toki Amatsuki walked out of the cabin and stood on the deck, asking, "Are we preparing to return?" She saw those people who had been kidnapped by the pirates in the cabin, and felt unspeakably uncomfortable. She glanced at Jin An. She was also rescued from the hands of human traffickers by him. She was also very fortunate to have met Jin An. It was he who led her to the path she is on now. "We can depart at any time." The mission was completed, so they had to prepare to return to the Marine headquarters. However, the headquarters asked us to go to Water 7 again. "Someone will be there to meet us." The message from the headquarters further confirmed that someone had been following these new recruits from the training camp. It was both to supervise the completion of their mission and to protect their safety. It's just that the person responsible for following Jin An and the others couldn't find their location after they flew into the sky, and finally had to give up following them. If we return to Water 7, I want to try the water meat there, I heard it's delicious. Since Kuzan followed Jinan, in addition to his hobby of drinking, he also developed a preference for tasting delicious food. Don't even think about it, we don't have that much time for you to wander around. Toki Amatsuki said truthfully. Bad woman. Kuzan complained, Jinan, you quickly control her, even my hobbies are going to be deprived. I think what Toki Amatsuki said is very right. Jinan paused and continued, in the future, no drinking during working hours, if I smell it again, you can go wake up in the sea. You. Kuzan pointed at the two people opposite him. What's wrong? Jinan glanced at him. Kuzan decisively admitted defeat, nodding and bowing, guaranteed to complete the mission. At the edge of the island, the coconut trees swayed a unique silhouette, and people gathered here silently. Their eyes were fixed firmly on the pirate ship not far away, and they saw several agile young men pulling thin lines back from the pirate ship, coming to a place far away from the pirate ship. Suddenly, they brought the torches close to the thin line, and the next moment, time seemed to freeze. As the fuse continued to shorten, the place where the pirate ship was located was suddenly filled with flames, and the orange-red light was brilliant under the night, reflecting on every face. Rumble. Along with a loud noise, a black mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the scorching flames burned the sea water to boiling. The huge shock wave caused the island to tremble, and the pirate ship was swallowed by the violent flames, and the thread hanging overhead instantly became blackened wreckage. The whole world turned red at this moment. People smiled at each other. They were originally prepared to fight the pirates to the death, but they didn't expect to be saved by Jinan and the others. I thought you would keep these pirate ships. Jinan said, looking at the fire in front of him. Selling pirate ships was a considerable income. Moreover, the materials used in these pirate ships were very particular, and it was a good choice to dismantle them and use them to build houses. The people on the island shook their heads and said, it's useless to keep these things, we just want a peaceful life, and burning the pirate ships on the coast can also give the pirates who approach this island in the future wrong information. So many pirate ships being burned outside the island can deter small pirate groups. They are the kind of islands that do not have the ability to join the world government, and can only use this simple method to prevent pirate intrusion. Although, maybe, it's not very useful. But keeping the pirate ships would only attract trouble for them. Among the mountains of wood chips flew, and the newly recruited shipbuilding assistants were anxiously trying to keep up with the pace of the industry. Icebug, you will follow me and learn well from now on. A man must face challenges squarely. I will train you to become a shipbuilding expert who can stand alone. Tom stood next to the young boy, he patted the boy's shoulder with his rough big hand, and his eyes were full of encouragement. Don't be nervous, kid. Tom said, his voice like a summer breeze blowing across the sea, every master learns from the mistakes they have made, you just need to remember that shipbuilding not only requires hands, but also requires heart. After hearing Tom's words, the boy's eyes rekindled with hope. He clenched his tools, a smile appeared on his firm face, and he threw himself into the shipbuilding work again. Jinan and the others stood at the entrance of the workshop, witnessing this warm scene. They looked at each other, a hint of doubt flashed in their eyes. Oh? A man who stands tall sees an acquaintance back. Tom saw the figure appearing at the door, put down what he was doing, showed a smile, opened his arms, and gave Jinan a hug. Jinan took a step forward, raising his dusty face, haha, we're here to bother you again, you really haven't changed at all, you're always so energetic. Is this kid your newly recruited student? Jinan looked at the young man who was burying his head in hard work, feeling a little familiar. Tom looked at the young man who was studying hard, with a big smile on his face, that's right, but he's not just an apprentice, I'm training him as my successor. His talent is no less than that of an old man like me. Then congratulations to you. Jinan pulled Tom to a place where no one was around and said quietly, the world government has set its sights on Water 7, you should pay attention to unfamiliar faces around you next. Jinan put the den mushi in his palm and played the recorded sound from before. He also heard the conversation in the den mushi on the way here, and he didn't expect the world government to have set its sights on Water 7 so early. There's no way to do this, after all, 800 years ago, the warship named Pluton was manufactured here. Why are you telling me such an important thing? Tom looked at the other party with complicated eyes. Because I admire you. Jinan said, this kind of thing is very important to you, but it has no value to me. Tom pondered for a moment and then asked, "Do you know why they are so interested in this place?" The Den Mushi didn't mention that thing. He started this topic because he wanted to share the biggest secret in his heart with the other party. Because of Pluton, right? Jinan replied. Tom found that he seemed to be more and more unable to understand the other party. Jinan seemed to know everything. You know Pluton.